big announcement for us was, and we had some fun with this, honestly, on the way to the announcement last night, and we shared the news at dinner with some journalists at that time last night, and then at the show this morning, was that we're going to go forward with a turbocharged version of Veloster, and that got a lot of, I think, a lot of good marks. And we had seriously thought long and hard about this at Hyundai Motor America because, Genesis Coupe is a true performance car, and it's rear-wheel drive, and we have the 2-liter turbo in there. And there was a lot of back and forth internally as to whether or not it made sense to, keep Veloster focused in what we call the EcoSport mode, which I think is going to be a growing subsegment of small specialty cars, and let Genesis Coupe carry the banner as our true performance coupe. And in the end, we performance guys went out and said, you know what, 2 turbos are better than just one. Let's go for it.
That's fantastic. That's really cool to hear that. We're talking about a smaller engine, though, than the one that's in the Genesis. It's not the 2.0 liter, is it?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to have some pretty wicked power density. It's a 1.6 liter, which is the standard engine right now, direct injected. And we add a turbo and some other details, which we're not quite ready to share yet, to get the horsepower to a number that we're also not quite ready to share yet. There are other installations of this car where we've had other public horsepower announcements, but we're not quite finished with what we're doing on Veloster. But it's going to be fun, and I can't wait to tell the world about it at the Detroit Auto Show in January. That
is pretty exciting. Are they going to have offering both kinds of transmissions with it, or will it only be an automatic or the manual or the direct shift?
That is also something I want to keep under wraps because we're doing something a little bit different on the transmission side too. So that's one where I like to say stay tuned for details.
Very cool, very cool. And of course, pricing is nowhere near ready to be announced, I'm sure. But are you looking at? Are there any competitors that we should look at in terms of who you could point to and say that's really who we want to target in terms of price?
The whole thing with Veloster, and I think you guys get, and I think a lot of folks get it, is that car doesn't have a lot of clear and direct competition. The closest thing we point to is the Scion TC, but that car is so much heavier. It's 400 pounds heavier. It has less interior space. It doesn't have, it's got a very, very different feel. It's a great car. I like what Toyota and Scion did with the new TC. But the Veloster is something different. And it's one of the first cars, I think, we can truly and proudly say that could only be a Hyundai. Like, no one else could do that car. It doesn't look like anything else. The door configuration, everything about it, it's got this iconoclastic feel going for it that makes us all really, really proud in Orange County.
Now, we've heard rumors that there's a UK market 4-door version of Veloster that is being prepared because it's obviously right-hand drive. There might have been some thought I'd heard floating around the internets about bringing a 4-door version of the thing over here as well.
Yeah, I don't know where that comes from. I think it's just silly people making silly speculation because it's fun. But we are going to do.
Could that also be there's something been spied going around Detroit lately, which is a 4-door with a hatch that I believe is probably the new Sonata wagon or something that's sold in Europe?
Yeah, we definitely had our what we call the I-40, which is, it's just between Elantra and Sonata in our lineup, and there's a fabulous estate version of that car that is doing very, very well in Europe, where we always do testing for a lot of our international products in the U.S. for various reasons. There's some calibration activities we do here, and just some of our weather is perfect no matter which market. So sometimes we'll be testing European-only spec vehicles in the U.S., and I think that's what that was, that I-40 estate. But going back to the Veloster and the 3-door, one of the things we decided to do is a joint decision was for right-hand drive markets, we did engineer a different body in white so that the extra door, the bonus door, is always on the passenger side of the vehicle. I mean, there have been other manufacturers with 3-doors, but they didn't engineer 2 bodies in white. We made the expense to go ahead and do that. So right-hand drive markets get a bonus door on the passenger side. Left-hand drive markets get a bonus door on the passenger side. And that's how we think about that door, as a bonus door, because I know a lot of people say, well, why don't you just put a 4th door on it? But then it's a 4-door, and it lacks the uniqueness. And one of the things that we've tried hard to communicate, and I don't know if you guys will give me this one or not, but bear me out. The interior of every automobile ever made, just about, with a few exceptions, for example, the McLaren F1, are not symmetrical bilaterally, right? The right side is different from the left side. In our left-hand drive markets, the driver is always on the left-hand side of the car, right? And the passenger is on the right. And usually you want the backseat passenger to get on the right-hand side of the vehicle. And Veloster is one of the first cars that recognizes this and delivers a door configuration that's really useful. It doesn't have the goofy suicide doors, which everyone hates after they've purchased the car for a week. They realize what a foolish decision they made buying a car with suicide doors, because you have to open the front door to open up the rear door. It ends up being such a hassle. So Veloster is the first car, really, in volume that, takes that approach and kind of delivers the asymmetry of the interior of the car to the exterior. I think it's kind of cool. And based on the response we're getting from the market, we sold over 3,700 in October. It was our first full month. People are really digging this car. And it's people of all age groups, all demographics. They appreciate that door as what it is. It's an extra way to get into the backseat. We like to say that because it's a pretty small backseat, I have to be honest. It's a very small car. It's just 166 inches long. But we like to say that if you can't get through the rear door, you probably don't belong in the backseat of a Veloster. Does that make sense? Maybe that's a little naughty. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that makes sense to me. I mean, it's kind of funny. There's some people in the chat room, especially DC Auto Geek, is saying that he's sort of reviewed
Hello,
a lot of...
DC Auto Geek. I see DC Auto Geek all the time. He
He's awesome.
My Twitter feed.
He said he did some research on Veloster owners, and he's seeing a lot of conversions from one of two places. They're either Mazda or Hyundai, and I have to say, I always said I wanted an RX-8, but I didn't want to have to replace an engine after 50,000 miles.
Yeah.
So the Veloster is that third door, makes sense to me.
Yeah, thanks. We're definitely seeing a lot of Mazda conversion, and it makes sense that a car like that one, I think, would appeal to folks who had previously owned a Mazda. We'll have our first set of really complete source of sales data soon, just to see how that's going. But so far, it's just going gangbusters in what we call the small specialty segment. It's the best-selling car already in that segment, doing very well against cars like the TC and the Mini. We'll see that. You could, I suppose, make a case that the new Beetle, now just called the Beetle, is a part of that segment. I'm not sure, and even the Fiat Cinquecento. It's an interesting point of view on how you would categorize it, but. So far, so good. And my big concern, my big worry going forward is, are we going to be able to meet demand for this car, in the months ahead? Because it seems to be that the same constant refrain that we've had from our dealers and consumers with a lot of the new stuff that we've been launching. It's a good problem to have, but, in some fashion ends up being very frustrating because you never know how high is up.
Well, I just want to remind everybody, if you want to call in and ask a question, you need to dial *6, and then we will put you through to ask a question, or you can ask a question in the chat room. I have a question. So what does this do in terms of that overall goal of meeting the 40 miles per gallon on so many of the cars now? Yeah,
it's a huge help for us. So Veloster comes standard with 40 mpg highway level. I think the city is 28, and with the DCT, the city label is better, but the highway level label is a little bit worse. I think the combined is about the same. So they both end up, from memory, 31, 32 combined. And when you convert that real world, that's kind of EPA real world fuel economy number that's on the label. When you convert it to the NHTSA CAFE standard, the numbers go up substantially. And so that car delivers for us in CAFE terms about 42 miles per gallon in CAFE terms. So it really helps us on the way to getting to our self-imposed target of 50 mpg by 2025. The folks in D.C., along with CARB, are working hard to figure out what our standard will be for 2025. The kind of where it is right now is at 54.5 miles per gallon. And we'll see where it ends up. There's lots of discussion still ongoing with a lot of the rulemaking that's going on. And, I don't know where the government standard will be. I do know that we're going to remain committed, no matter where that standard is, to hitting at least 50 by 2025. And I think, we're reporting now our corporate average fuel economy results and our adjusted fuel economy results with our sales reports. And I believe so far this year we're running about 37 miles per gallon year to date, which is really good.
That's pretty incredible. So in terms of, let's talk about some of the cars that you guys have out there at SEMA right now. I mean, of course, there is the great Reese Millen race car. That thing is amazingly beautiful.
I would love to talk about that one, Michelle, and then I got to ask you a question about sound systems, but we'll come to that in a minute.
I can talk about sound systems, man. I know now.
Gave you the personal tour, but so we this still I think remains hard for people, even industry folks, to understand. But the Genesis and the Genesis Coupe really share a remarkable level of under the skin commonality. I mean, almost the exact same floor pan, the transmission tunnel, the cowl, or what's also known as the firewall, the front engine subframe, completely common between the two cars. So, and we always knew this, and we always knew that it would be very easy to install the Tau V8 engine from the Genesis sedan into the Genesis Coupe. So we had Reese Millen, who is one of our racing and rally partners, a drift partner and a good friend, build the car for us for SEMA, and I was chatting with him on the taxi ride in to the show just yesterday, and Reese was, just so surprised at how easy everything was. I mean, almost everything just dropped right in. And the Tau V8, much bigger engine than our V6, even fits under the hood without any change to the hood. I mean, it was a breeze of an installation. So that is something within the realm of possibility. And the question is, do we want to go there? There are a lot of fun reasons to go ahead and do it. But there are a lot of other reasons that make us pause a little bit. So one of the things we wanted to do with this car at SEMA was to honestly see what people had to say about that possibility. Because we've got other things coming too. I mean, we have the higher horsepower 3.8 liter V6 with direct injection coming from the Genesis sedan. We're going to announce that at the Detroit Auto Show, and that's going to have a horsepower rating that gets pretty darn close to what we could do with a V8. And so then you ask the question, well, how far do you go, and you really want this V8 engine in your coupe or not? I don't know. I don't know what you guys think. What do you guys think? Should we go ahead and do something like that, or do you think it's a little bit too much?
Sets up some interesting fights between Genesis and Mustang, doesn't it?
Yeah, it would be interesting. Two 5.0s going at it,
Exactly.
I think the horsepower ratings are remarkably similar too. I think they're right around the 429 where we are with our Tau V8.
You just wrote the next Fast and Furious movie, I think.
Right. I mean, does that mean we'd have a Korean pony car?
Yeah.
It could be. Well, we like to think there's already a Korean pony car, but it's a V6, right? But
how do we say pony car in Korean?
We might have the word kimchi in it, I think. But so I demoed for Michelle today on the SEMA show floor a really special, production level readiness Lexicon audio system. We have a Lexicon system in the Genesis sedan, and our good friends at Harman were showing us what Lexicon could sound like in Genesis Coupe. So they put together an equivalent system. 825 watts.
825 watts. That's a lot of watts.
That's like 3 extra horsepower. That's like adding 3 horsepower.
Absolutely astonishing sound, and so we were spinning Adele, and at maximum volume, and she sounded absolutely perfect. It was like she was in the car with us, wasn't it, Michelle? I mean, it was astonishing. It's
incredible. And what was so there were 14 speakers, right? And
yes.
There was like the mid range, and then the little tweeters, and then it was. When I first got in the car, I didn't notice that anything was done differently. It was very subtle. There wasn't like a huge old beatbox in the back end.
Yeah, right. The only thing that kind of gave it away at all for me was the mid-range speakers in the corners of the IP top, but everything else was just factory stock looking, and the sound was incredible. The folks at Harman do amazing things. So that's a real trend we see in the industry. More and more people are carrying their music with them on their iPhones and iPods and the like. But when they're in their car, they want the full audio experience, and they're willing to pay for it. And when you think about it, a car is like the perfect rolling sound system. You know, it's a small defined space. You can tune things to absolute perfection, and often get better sound inside your automobile than you would in your own living room at home. So that's certainly something we're looking at for Genesis Coupe.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, well, everything down to you can plug your Xbox into the Veloster, right? There's a lot of different options.
Yeah, Veloster comes standard with Xbox capability. We supply the RCA cable, comes standard with the 7-inch screen. Of course, it doesn't work when you're driving, but this is one of the things we're coming to, and one of these big industry trends that you read an awful lot about. Younger people today seem less interested in automobiles than folks just a few years back, and I think it's incumbent on us in the industry to figure out why, and to make the cars so incredibly entertaining that it gets them to move away from their cell phones and PDAs and iPhones and actually want to get in and have a physical experience driving a car. I was pleased to see someone who purchased a Veloster call it, and they tweeted us, the perfect rolling smartphone. And I thought, yeah, great, I'll take it.
That's awesome.
We have a question from the chat room, curious about what the future holds for Equus in the United States. How many have you sold so far, and how's that going? Kind of an experiment, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it has been. It's been a big experiment for us, and it's been doing absolutely great. We had hoped to sell 2,000 this year in our first year, and I think we broke through 2,000 in September. We'll deliver about 3,000 this year, so we exceed our sales target by about 50%. And that number may not mean a lot to you and to the listeners, but another way to think about it is market share of that segment, which is the most premium segment in the industry, the kind of the premium flagship sedan segment, where the Mercedes-Benz S-Class, BMW 7 Series, Audi A8, the Lexus LS, all of these vehicles reside. And the Equus is pulling a 5% segment share in that segment, which is very similar to the Hyundai brand. The whole Hyundai brand in the U.S. industry runs 5 to 6%. And I like to look at it in that way because it makes sense to people that Hyundai can have success in segments like compact cars and mid-sized cars with Sonatas and crossovers like Tucson and Santa Fe, and they get that. But for us to deliver that same level of success in a premium segment where the average transaction price is about $80,000 is something else entirely, and the fact that Equus is in there slugging it out with those heavyweights and holding its own is pretty good. Especially since we took the big gamble and did it without a premium standalone luxury set of dealerships,
Well, I remember you saying when you actually came over to Hachi here in Ann Arbor during the Accent Drive that we were on, about how Hyundai is basically regarded in many ways similar to just like the fourth or fifth brand just beyond the luxury brands or something like that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You're referring to the American Express.
Yes, that's
black
right. The American
card,
Express
the
black
Centurion card. That blew us away. I think the number, this is from recollection, was 6% of black card owners have a Hyundai in their garage.
It's American Express Black Card. We should tell everybody that basically there was a study done by American Express Black, which is the super exclusive credit card that you have to be basically invited to join. And they did a study of, what do these black card owners drive? And as you had presented, Hyundai actually ranks up there very highly.
Yeah, we're among the, I think, top 7-8 brands, something like that, among black card owners, and tied with Bentley and Audi, as I recall, which is pretty good company to keep. And these are folks with, massive household income and assets, definitely the top 1%, probably top 0.01% of Americans in terms of wealth and income. So for Hyundai to be in that group is pretty cool. And as we dove a little bit deeper into the data, a lot of it was Genesis. The survey was too soon for Equus, but when you think about it, it makes sense. A lot of these people who are successful at accumulating wealth and assets do it because they find the best product and they're smart shoppers, and they love to feel smart about what they've purchased. And they don't need the social, because they're very confident in their economic situation, they don't need the social validation of owning a premium brand. In fact, they often choose just the opposite. They prefer to make a choice that's perceived as smart and maybe a little bit unusual, and that better fits their psyche and where they're coming from. This isn't true of all very wealthy people, but we find it's true of a significant percentage of them that they don't want to be ostentatious. They want to make a choice that just reflects their good taste, not their striving for some kind of social recognition.
Actually, right now
it seems to be working well.
They're probably actually striving for some social anonymity right now, given all the Occupy Wall Street movements everywhere.
Right.
Seriously, and that was the same trend that really fueled Genesis doing well, because we launched Genesis right about the time of the Lehman Brothers collapse and the start of the Great Recession. We're going to use that term frequently, but let's face it, that's what it was. And that was a time when, a lot of people who were kind of serially leasing BMW 7 Series and Mercedes-Benz S-Classes began to think, this is a little socially awkward for me now to be driving such an ostentatious car. I think I'd rather drive something that, represents a different place. And a different value set. And we found a lot of the early Genesis buyers during that period were folks like that coming from BMW and Audi and Mercedes and the like, and just wanted a lower profile car that still had all the stuff that they wanted.
What's interesting is that was done before by a luxury brand. I mean, Bentley did it in the 60s, of course, with the Princess, and it was not badged Bentley, but it looked like a sort of modified small Bentley, and it had the teak drop down rear tables on the back and all leather, and they were absolutely stunning, but they were seen as being like the sort of more subdued version of being wealthy for people that didn't want to have to flaunt their wealth. I mean, it's definitely that kind of economy right now. I mean, do you see the Equus program of selling people cars at their home being able to branch into other Hyundai areas?
It's such a great question, Michelle, and it's not inexpensive to do, truly, but it is so much less expensive than building a $50 or $75 million luxury showroom, or building 150 to 200 standalone showrooms that might average $10 million to $20 million a pop. I mean, that money has to be baked into the price of the car, into the margin of the car. There's no other way. It has to be supported by the car. And so our decision was, in the end, no one, I mean, this is the truth in the auto industry, we all just need to admit it, no one really ever wants to go to a car dealership because everyone has better things to do in their lives. Not that car dealers are bad places to be, but just that we would rather get our coffee at a Starbucks than we would at a fancy premium car dealership. And we'd rather, if you're a golfer, you'd probably rather be golfing at a golf course as opposed to, sitting at the putting green at the Lexus store, the BMW store. Those things make going to a car dealership a better experience, but the reality is you don't want to have to go to a car dealership at all. And that was the insight that founded and informed the Equus your time, your place, vehicle demonstration drives.
But it's still not cutting out the dealer, which is awesome because it doesn't break franchise and compliance laws.
Exactly, yeah. And we have a great dealer body. We wouldn't want to cut them out, but what they appreciate is that this is a way to bring the car to the consumer at their place of work or where they live. And in about 25 states, the deal can actually be done outside the dealership. And in the other half of states, the franchise laws actually require that the paperwork and everything actually be signed on the premises for whatever reason. So that's been great. And something like 20 to 30% of Equus buyers took advantage of that your time, your place demonstration drive. And we find their satisfaction with the car is very, very high. The other thing, and this honestly has been bigger for us, is Equus at Your Service, which is the program where we have a free maintenance program, but what distinguishes our free maintenance program is we'll come to your house or place of business and get the car, leave you a Genesis or an Equus loaner vehicle. So you never really have to go to the car dealership ever. If you have any concern with the car, if you need the oil change, which we'll cover, if you maybe hear a squeak and rattle or something that you're not sure of, you make a phone call or you talk to us on the internet, and we'll arrange for your car to be picked up and taken care of and delivered back to you, all washed and clean and ready to go. That came from an insight speaking with BMW owners. BMW owners love their free maintenance programs. And it's one of the key drivers of BMW's success over the years. They've done a fantastic job with that program. The issue is BMW installed base is now so high. There are so many BMW units in operation, all of them with free maintenance, right, that BMW's service facilities in the morning are places you really don't want to be. And so what ends up being, what started out as a great benefit has become a bit of a hassle, and BMW owners are now increasingly kind of bothered by what was a free benefit but is now so difficult to access. And BMW owners in particular seem to really resonate around this idea. Oh my God, you don't have to go and wait in the service drive at 7:30 in the morning to get my oil changed. And it's a bit of a revelation for them.
We have a question from the chat room. Do you think that Hyundai needs a consistent look for their dealerships?
Yes, we do. However, we have a slightly different, and I would argue a more enlightened approach. If you look at a lot of the facility programs around the industry today, many of them, I'm not exaggerating, specify the grout to be used on the showroom floor and in the bathrooms. I mean, it's an extraordinary level of detail and specificity, and we don't think that's the right approach. And as with many things we do at Hyundai, we're taking a Pareto principle point of view, the 80-20 rule, which says, you can deliver, in many cases, 80% of the benefit of some program with just 20% of the cost if you're really smart about it. And then you can spend your money on the things that really, really matter. Does it matter that the grout is the same at a dealership in Huntsville, Alabama, as a dealership in Southern California? I mean, and would you even necessarily want them to be the same? Maybe the local conditions are so different that it wouldn't make any sense to do that. So what we're doing is, and what we have done with our facilities program, is develop a package of most visible points in the dealership, the fascia, the signage, various aspects within the dealership. And those are becoming requirements that we're working with our dealers to roll into over a 2 or 3 year period. And so with time, our dealerships are going to have a remarkable level of consistency and harmony. But we're going to do it at about 20% of the total cost, Hyundai plus dealership cost, as a lot of our competitors have had to do. And you know what? I think 99.9% of consumers will be absolutely delighted and will not be offended by the fact that the grout is different in the Huntsville, Alabama store compared to the store in San Leandro.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Because, I mean, as a former franchisee, and not in automotive, by the way, but, I have talked to different sorts of industry franchisees that are like a Baskin-Robbins guy one time who told me in order to rebrand his store to meet corporate standards, he had to spend something like $150,000. And I mean, for a Baskin-Robbins, that's a lot of money. And instead of letting him, I mean, there was, no regional concern that maybe his store should look different because it was in Southern California instead of in Texas or in, some other area. Like, they all have to look exactly the same. And these franchisees end up spending a ton of money. And mind you, what most people don't realize, even though they want that homogenous experience walking into any business and wanting it to look the same in New York as it does in Atlanta, is that a lot of times these corporate franchisors are making money on the signage and the building out of all of those franchisees, and they're small business owners. They're local small business owners that can't afford to make the changes.
Yeah, I mean, it's a major issue, and the NADA is, I think, doing a great job bringing voice to the dealers on this issue, because some of the requirements are really over the top. As you say, the investment requirements are significant. I mean, dealers really, they have a lot of their assets and equity at risk anyway, and when an OEM comes along with these big programs, it's a huge and significant financial burden. Our approach has always been a little bit different, and you could say, well, that's an issue because Hyundai dealers across the country, maybe that's where the questioner is coming from, have not been the most consistent in terms of look and feel. It's true, and I accept that. I think it's a fair criticism. But if you look at where we are right now, we've probably flipped 400 to 500 dealers of our 800-odd dealers into a remarkably consistent internal and external appearance, and we're going to get the rest of them over the next couple of years. And
that's awesome.
I think we're going to do it in a very investment-efficient fashion.
Well, we should probably take one last question because I think you do have to go get on a flight pretty soon here.
I'm gonna hop on a plane soon. Yeah, it's my pleasure.
I actually have one last question then.
Okay.
Sure thing.
What are you willing to tell us about the i30 plug-in?
The i30 plug-in. This is Chelsea.
Of course.
What do I know about the i30 plug-in? I mean, not a lot. I don't even know. I don't know. What have you heard about the i30 plug-in? You probably know more about it than I do.
All right, fair enough. Then I guess there's not that much out there about it. It's certainly framed as the Prius killer, but nobody knows enough specs.
Yeah.
To say.
Now we do have a U.S. version of the European i30, which is our compact C-segment car, coming to the U.S. in the not so distant future. We've talked about that. It's a replacement for what is currently known as the Elantra Touring, right now it's a conventional gasoline engine vehicle, but it's going to be a nice addition to the Elantra lineup, along with the coupe. We're going to have an Elantra two-door coupe coming in the early part of next year. So we'll flesh out the Elantra lineup next year and have a total of 3 different body styles to choose from.
There'll be a whole lot of metal in the
Yeah,
showroom.
you're getting a plug.
A lot of sheet metal, yeah. And I wish I had something to say about the plug-in stuff, but I'm really not sure about that.
That's okay. I'll settle for driving the Turbo Veloster.
There you go. Okay, we can arrange that.
It's very close to what I have now. I have an eye on red line now, so it's totally up my alley.
Oh, that's perfect. Well, where do you live?
I live in L.A.
Oh, perfect. Well, we'll arrange an early test drive for you.
Oh, there you go.
I think we'll have to. Yeah, Orange County's not so far.
You got to watch her. She has a heavy foot.
I do.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, I'm the only EV person that's known for my right foot.
See, our PR guy, Jim Trainer, on his, he drove from Orange County to Vegas, and he got nabbed going 96 miles an hour in a Veloster.
Oh, no.
Is that all?
Yeah, and the sad thing was the policeman told him, because the whole pack of traffic was going that speed, and the policeman told Jim that, well, I had to pick one of you. And,
what
and
color
I think
was
it's
the
just
car?
unfortunate. It was orange. It was an orange Veloster, So he might have just had a little sign on his window saying, arrest me, pick this one. Poor Jim was doomed.
I'm going to have to give Jim some grief about that one.
Give him some grief. He deserves it.
One of the cruelest drives I ever was on was here in Vegas when we got put in the R-Spec Genesis, and we were driving through the Valley of Fire, and it's a state park that has a 45 to 50 mile an hour speed limit in an R-Spec.
That was hard. I remember that drive, Michelle, and that was tough to keep to the speed limit.
And I was driving with Scott Burgess, and we were kind of like, okay, what do we do? We want to have fun.
That's why we arranged for the racetrack portion at lunch, remember?
Scott Burgess.
I forgot the name of that racetrack, but there's a fabulous racetrack not too far outside of Vegas.
Scott Burgess doesn't drive fast, come on.
It's true. He and I are actually like two little old ladies when we drive together. We just sit there and listen to the radio and like kvetch about everybody.
Yeah.
Didn't Scott get pulled over on that drive? Didn't he get pulled over, though? I thought he did.
Scott?
Maybe.
No, we got lost. We got really lost for like an hour.
Why am I not surprised?
Did it have a nav system?
Well, we were listening to the radio. Well, we didn't try it. We were actually utilizing the iPhone adapter, and we were listening to old Phil Hendry radio shows.
Oh, there we go. That's a good excuse for getting lost, I guess.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, you guys, this has been a lot of fun for me. I have to go hop on an aeroplane.
Yes. Well, have a safe flight. Thank you, John Krafcik, CEO of Hyundai North America. Everything that happens at SEMA is so much fun, and I love that you guys had such a big presence here today.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I really appreciate you guys coming by. I appreciate being on the show. It was great fun for me. I'd love to do it again. Just let me know.
Outstanding. We'll see you in Los Angeles.
You betcha. Take care. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay. Well, everybody, this is still open line. We are. How funny was that? He just seriously he wanted to come on so badly that we rescheduled the entire interview part of it so that he could be here, because we have another guest coming on at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, 6 p.m. Pacific, who is Margaret Brooks, who is from Chevy, and so we're gonna have more SEMA talk coming up. But Chelsea and Aaron, hey,
Q&A session is over.
We just started this whole recording the thing really quickly, and I didn't even get to say hi, really.
Hello, good to talk to you again. So I would ask you how Las Vegas is, but I understand what the number one rule of Las Vegas is, so we're not allowed to ask.
Yeah, you know, it's really. So here's my night last night. I went to the GM thing with Brenda Pretty. You know, she's like party queen.
I love Brenda. She's right. So much fun.
She's such a party queen. And then we both needed rides back to our hotel, so we ran into Harold Gunn from Texas, who, if anybody of you have ever had the chance to meet Harold, he's absolutely awesome, has a nationally syndicated radio show, and he also has an outdoor and gun show as well, besides automotive. So if you're
all goes together. It all goes together in my world. Let me tell you.
In Texas, it certainly does.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just had a quiet evening with GM and those two, and I was home early.
Well, that's no good. You can't be home early in Las Vegas.
I know, I was. Well, I did actually. I take it back. So I went to the casino and I went to have a beer, and my $5 rule. A beer costs $5 at a bar. If you play video poker and you put in $5, you get the beer for free as long as you play video poker, right? And I won $50.
Whoa, there you go. That's a few beers.
So that was a productive beer.
That was a productive
beer. That's
Congratulations.
Awesome.
You're ahead, right?
Exactly.
You're ahead. Hey, as long as you're ahead.
I can stay another 10 days for one $5 beer a night.
So what did you see at SEMA today that really made you go, hey, look at that?
Oh God, it's so overwhelming. I mean, the amount of stuff. I mean, it is if you've never been to the Las Vegas Convention Center, let alone SEMA, it's hard to explain how much space this thing takes up, and it goes on and on and on, and there are just halls after halls. Seems to me that Hot Wheels and Matchbox have a very big interest right now in doing some special cars, right? Because they did the Matchbox Ford F-350.
That looks so cool.
Which is really fun.
So cool.
And then they're giving out like a limited edition 5,600 little Matchbox trucks. And then they had a Hot Wheels Fiesta, and then they did a Hot Wheels Camaro that they revealed last night that has this incredible sort of like, Heineken bottle green, like mirrored finish on it with the little red lined wheels. And
well, Brenda took a picture of that thing and posted it on Facebook, and we were commenting that I got to admit, it looked like the front right quarter panel didn't quite match the color of the front fascia. Like it was just an angle kind of thing, but it looked like the two colors weren't the same, and it looked kind of cheap.
It's one of those paint finishes that's so odd because it is almost mirror, but it's not that mirror wrap stuff.
Brenda called it chrome green, basically.
Yeah.
Well, if it doesn't match, we'll just make that one more valuable, actually. The mistake cars always are. The boys here are huge Hot Wheels fans, so we have thousands of them.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
But they're cool, right? So that car is actually it's not going to be a production car. This is a SEMA thing that they did with Mattel, but they are going production at Mattel. So I'm sure your son can have one, soon.
Well, I'll have to get my hands on one that I can walk over to Mattel from my house. So if I have to go baking, I will.
So that's kind of one of the fun things. I think people like seeing that stuff. So I guess the hottest car of the year was once again the Camaro that they announced this morning. Hottest 4x4 was Wrangler.
Yeah, that was SUV of the year. That wasn't it, some magazine?
Right.
Yeah.
Truck is F-150. I mean, they seem kind of like, for SEMA, you'd think they'd be like one particular trim or one company's trim level or something like that. And then the hottest sport compact was the Fiat 500.
Really?
And so there's a lot of Fiat 500s around here that have a lot of different tuning kits on them. I mean, there's one in the SRT8 tent, but it kind of surprised me a little, I think, because there were so many great like Fiestas. And you know what actually really shocked me, and I forgot to ask Krafcik about this, was there was no accent that I've seen yet.
Really?
Yeah.
Absent from the show, huh?
Absent, and then where, Chevy has like so many Sonics here.
Huh. I don't know why that would be. Maybe they're just putting all the effort on Veloster for the moment. That's the big launch.
Veloster and Coupe, and he actually even mentioned to me today when we were talking about the two special Genesis Coupes that were here, that they weren't going to be able to use them for very much longer because the Coupe's getting a facelift.
Right. Yeah, actually we're supposed to see that, I think, at the LA show. Either LA or Detroit we're going to see that, I think.
I think it's LA.
Yeah. I'll know next Friday. There's a Hyundai preview happening here at the Hyundai Center.
Which is kind of funny when you think about it, because at the end of the day, like, do you really care if there's being a facelift? Because this is called the aftermarket parts.
Right. That's true, yeah. So, I mean, they're still going to have to make aftermarket parts for the previous generation ones, too, but I guess we'll see.
People are going to buy them used and customize them for themselves.
Yeah. Well, SEMA has really become almost another show in the pantheon of auto shows, though. I mean, it's with the attention the automakers have given it in just the last 4 or 5 years.
It would actually make sense almost for SEMA to sort of integrate a little bit with CES now, because I mean, this compared to what it was 2-3 years ago, where it just felt like people were showing it because they got a trip to Vegas and they came from Minneapolis because they had a little aftermarket store and they weren't selling anything because no one was selling anything in those days.
Yeah.
This one actually feels a little bit different and it's popping. I mean, there's a lot going on.
Although I can't imagine
if you look at the presence of cars at CES this last year, they are integrating.
Yeah,
well, they've had Mullally was keynote speaker for the last 2 years, and this year it's who was it? Daimler, Zetscha.
Yeah, well, and just the amount of real estate that was pretty impressive.
Yeah, although I couldn't imagine having both SEMA and CES at the same time.
Well, and then there's always the porn convention that weekend. So.
Well, then you kind of have that going on at SEMA too, though, from what I understand.
Well, it's a lot of shared talent, absolutely.
Various booth babes and spokesmodels and things. Yes.
Yeah, it's well, you know what? There's actually, I think there's less booth babes.
Really?
I think there are. I will say this: I was amazed at the number of people I met today from Australia. A lot of Australians, a lot from Korea, a lot from Thailand, a lot from China, a ton of South Americans, Venezuela, Brazil, people from Mexico, Monterrey, Mexico.
That'd be manufacturing. But the thing is, for all these overseas folks, it's cheap for them to come here right now because the dollar is trading so low. So they can justify the international travel a lot easier than than us going to Frankfurt.
True that. I still have yet to run into MPG-O-Matic, Dan Gray, who is, I kind of wanted him to call in tonight. I kind of thought maybe he would because he's actually interested in doing some like aftermarket stuff, but in terms of making cars more fuel efficient, which is kind of fun.
Fish carburetors and things like that.
Yeah, like trimming cars out, with different like cowlings and
wheel spats.
Exactly. Like I think that's actually going to be something that we'll see if it grows here. It probably should. We're gonna have there's gonna be like one green hall, right?
Yeah, exactly. I won't make a comment.
They're not mutually exclusive.
I won't make a comment on what kind of booth babes are going to be in the green hall.
I beg your pardon.
I'm kidding.
That's hot cars with plugs on them.
That could be interesting, though. I mean, you said modifications for better fuel economy. So when I said wheel spats, I mean, really? Wheel spats? Like things that make the car more aerodynamic?
Yeah, well, there was and the way that Dan came about it was he was looking at this, Sewanee College had this eco car group that was actually modifying a 90s Explorer, and they managed to improve the fuel economy by over 10% by just making some minor modifications that cost under $2,000.
Wow.
So his sort of idea is that to get out there and like have aftermarket shops where people could like buy minivans or SUVs that need to accommodate their family's size, that they can do light modifications on for a minimum cost. I think it makes a lot of sense. I think it's a great aftermarket part.
You can get, digital valves and things that are more efficient, but also, yes, more aerodynamic body kits and whatnot, but also just lightweighting in general. And then when you have hybrids or plug-ins or whatever, you can ship them differently so that they rely on the batteries versus the engine differently, and either for performance or for economy. I think diesel absolutely end up being the domain of SEMA, no question. There's already a guy that's already enhanced his Tesla because it was too slow.
Indeed.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to a lot of the diesel engines that are coming soon.
Yeah, and then that's a whole other thing for SEMA too, right? Like all the modifications that go along with that.
I've driven some really fast, really fun diesel cars in my time, and I'm really looking forward to getting those things in this market.
Oh, come on, mister. I'm going to buy a 300 and SRT8 version.
Oh, if only. If only. I just
He's in love.
Oh, it goes well beyond love, Michelle. I had a Chrysler 2012 pre-production 2012 Chrysler 300 SRT8 over the weekend, and it is just fantastic. Every time I think to myself, a Fiesta might be a lot of fun to get as my next car, or something small, or Fiat 500. I find myself driving something like this with a 6.4 liter V8 and 450 horsepower, and I kind of forget about Fiat 500s and Hyundai Velosters. It is absolutely brutal. The power delivery in that thing is just massive. It's so much fun.
Well, you should buy one.
If I had a spare $57,000 lying around, it might be an option. But unfortunately, they do cost quite a bit. And the thing is, I don't know that I'd want a previous generation one that you'd find in a used car lot somewhere, because A, they've probably been beaten all to hell, and the previous gen LX cars didn't have that great of an interior. The interior on the new one is really phenomenal. It's just a world better than the previous one. So,
which one is your favorite? The Challenger, the Charger, or the 300C?
Well, the thing is, I like them all for different reasons. The Charger, I got to admit, the styling on the Charger is just knockout. Especially that rear end. The rear taillights make it look like something out of Tron. But I think the 300 is the most elegant, especially in the SRT8 form. It just sits right. It flows right. It looks right. The Charger's a bit dramatic. And I don't think that the Challenger looks different enough, frankly, for the SRT trim than any of the other ones. But
the 300C SRT8 would be your choice.
Yeah, I think it would have to be. I honestly do.
I agree. I couldn't believe it, but I actually saw the 300C SRT8 and liked that one the best myself.
Yeah.
And I thought I would like the Charger better until I saw them both in person. I said, you know what? I must be getting old. I think I like the 300 version better.
I'm surprised at it myself. Sleeker. I'm surprised at it myself, but I had a white one with a black grille, and it's. You know what? I might have a picture. I might be able to put a picture in the chat room. Hang on. I'm going to try some technology here.
You think Alfa is going to bring in a 300C SRT8 version as one of their leading?
Lancia Thema?
No, actually, no. In the United States, I was curious if Alfa Romeo, because they're going to be producing Alfas in the United States alongside Dodge in 2013, supposedly. I was wondering if Alfa, who has a great heritage of Hemi motors from the 60s and 70s, with their four-cylinder Hemi. I thought maybe it would be a nice lead-in for them to bring in a SRT8 Italian-bodied, 300C type vehicle.
It could be.
That'd be nice. It would make for a nice $65,000 Alfa Romeo, either coupe or sedan. It certainly, would be on par with, let's say, a 5 Series or possibly even the E-Class.
It'll be, we still have to see exactly what Alfa Romeo does in terms of what they bring in.
I think they're going to manufacture here. I think what we might see is a V6 twin-turbo Pentastar version of the 300C as an Italian Alfa Romeo body, beauty. That's what my guess is. I mean, after they do the base, the little hatchback and the 40-mile-per-gallon vehicle that they were required to by law from the agreement that they purchased Chrysler for nothing, they had to bring in a 40-mile-per-gallon vehicle. So it'll be exciting. I'm looking forward to it. I mean, Maserati, Ferrari are all beautiful vehicles. They're quite expensive. Alfa Romeo is more, is priced better.
Yeah.
And it should still be able to offer that excitement of Italian sheet metal.
Well, I tell you what I would find very interesting, and I wonder how realistic it is given some of the things that some of the Chrysler people have said, is a Chrysler 300 SRT6 with a turbocharged Pentastar V6 and all-wheel drive. That might be more up to, that might be more up the Europeans' alley if they brought something over like that over as a Lancia Thema, more of a.
I don't think. Well, I actually had a Lancia back in the '70s. I had the Scorpion, and I had a mid-engine. I had a turbocharged alcohol water injection, forged pistons. They're never coming back to the United States, in my opinion. But I think Alfa could come back a lot better. The problem with the Lancia name is it actually sounds very similar to the Dodge lineup of Lancer. Remember that they used to have the Lancer?
Well,
really just...
They won't be bringing Lancia back because they have Chrysler here, and wherever Chrysler is, Lancia is not. It's just going to be basically the same brand globally.
My question to you is, do you think that Fiat is making the same mistake that General Motors did, 5-10 years ago by having too many brands and they won't have the ability to advertise them appropriately and forceful enough because they have so many different brands?
That is a concern, and that's something that we actually have addressed with them. And when you remember Project Genesis at Chrysler, before they really got into the bankruptcy problem, one of the things Project Genesis was going to do was trim down the number of offerings under the Chrysler showrooms. It was bringing all the Chrysler brands together under the same actual physical showroom, but it was going to trim down the brands, so you wouldn't have both an Avenger and a Sebring. You'd have one mid-sized car. You wouldn't have both a 300 and a Charger. You'd have one large car. And when Fiat came along, they kind of did away with that. And so we've had both of these, not only just a proliferation of models, but a proliferation of brands now. Ram is now a separate brand. Fiat is now a separate brand. I didn't understand that at all. Yeah, we kind of questioned it, saying, really, can you support all of these? And that'll be a big question because it's a lot of money to support. I talked to some of the Ford people, and they're thrilled that they only have Lincoln and Ford left because they are spending so much more money on Lincoln and Ford than they were previously that it's really helping them out. They have 90 people working in Lincoln design right now, doing nothing but Lincoln design. They've created their own design studio. You haven't seen anything out of it yet, but you're going to, and they have that many people working on it. It's to their benefit. Same thing with GM. They don't have that kind of proliferation anymore, that kind of dilution of money, and it's showing dividends for sure.
So the question is it going to hurt Chrysler in the long run, or do you think they're actually going to sell off Alfa to VW for $1 billion before they bring it in?
No, I don't think there's any desire to add that. And VW.
You think they're bringing Alfa in? They can have Dodge, they can have Chrysler, they can have Jeep, they can have Ram, they can have Fiat, they can have Lancia in Europe.
Yeah,
a lot of stuff.
It is, and but the thing is, they're treating them all, in many cases, as the same brand. So you're going to have Lancia and Chrysler, for instance, are the same brand now. they're going to have common models. They're going to have everything, the same. So it'll be an interesting way to see how they do that. But it's a risk. And I honestly think that the reason we saw this brand proliferation, this split off of Ram, for one thing, is just in case the whole Chrysler experiment didn't work. Now you had Jeep as a separate entity. You have Ram and the trucks as a separate entity because they can be sold off as a brand. And that's really where
Chrysler's going to be the town and country, and possibly the 300C and the Sebring.
200.
Or not the 200. And that's it. And then you have Dodge, which has the Charger, the Challenger, and then they have a new Alfa Romeo spin-off of like the Julietta or something.
Yeah, the Caliber,
right?
Whatever replaces it.
And they're going to have are they still keeping the Journey?
They will keep the Journey.
That's selling well as a Fiat.
Fremont. Fremont.
In Europe. It's having some good success.
It's selling more than they otherwise would have if they didn't have it, I guess, which I guess is a good thing.
What was Chrysler up last month? 26%?
24% last month. Oh, that's year to date.
That's pretty impressive.
The interesting thing that I saw last month's results that just came out today, is the Chrysler 200, which is basically, let's call it what it is. It's a heavily massaged Chrysler Sebring. Sold 11,000 units last month.
Yeah.
That's
big
basically
number.
Yeah, it's twice the number of Nissan Maximas and almost as many Chevy Impalas. It's been a couple hundred.
But what's the price on that car? How much money is on that hood? And how many Chrysler employees? And how many fleet buys on that? That's a fleet buy if I ever saw one.
Their retail sales are up 40%. And even if you're talking fleet buyers, it's a 400% gain from what they used to sell of this model.
Okay.
Which is,
I don't know, the 200 just seems to be...
Hey, Aaron?
Yeah.
Aaron, Jonathan, you guys, I'm going to interrupt you really quickly so we can do the hourly, and we have our next guest on. So.
Excellent. And we're just rambling on about stuff.
We can go back to that.
Aaron.
We're going to, Jonathan, please stick around and come back in 30 minutes. We're going to talk to Margaret Brooks from GM for a little bit, and then we're going to go back to being an open line. So, welcome to Open Line if you just joined us. This is our
Q&A session started.
Oops. Welcome to Open Line if you just joined us. This is our monthly automotive get-together. I'm Michelle Naranjo from AutoByDale.com, and I'm joined by Chelsea Sexton from ChelseaSexton.com and Revenge of the Electric Car, coming soon to a theater near you, and Aaron Bragman, analyst extraordinaire from IHS. We do this on the first Tuesday of every month at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. If you would like to ask a question or call in for the open line period after we finish with our guest, call 712-432-0900, PIN number 911633. To ask a question, dial *6. The rest of, after we're done recording, you guys can just talk. You can also get us on Skype. The instructions are near the chat room at bit.ly/open line. You can also ask questions in the chat room, and we'll make sure the guest gets to see them. And thank you guys for being here. Margaret, are you there? I think she's there. Not sure who our caller from Michigan is.
Were they on the? Were they listed as a moderator?
Well, Ben said they just dropped off.
It was Dave Sullivan again. He called in and then just...
That dreaded Dave Sullivan.
So no Margaret?
Hi, Michelle. This is Margaret.
There we are.
Hey, Margaret.
I am on.
It is great
I
to have
just momentarily lost you.
So, everyone, this is Margaret Brooks, and she is the Product and Pricing Director for Chevrolet Small Cars, who I think it was very funny when you told me that also includes Camaro because you get to have a little fun every so often.
Absolutely. I mean, small is all relative, and that's how we define it here at Chevy. It's everything from Spark through Cruze and Volt all the way up to Camaro. So a pretty broad array of products.
Well, congratulations on Cruze doing so well this year. It's been the top-selling compact car on the segment for 2010, basically, or 2011. It's 2011 now, isn't it? Yeah.
Thank you. It's really been a good year for us, and really, it's all about getting the product right. If we make a great product that customers love, really the rest takes care of itself.
So there's been some question about the whole Chevy Runs Deep campaign. How is it going for you?
Well, we're very committed to the campaign, and, when you look at the results for the Chevrolet business, really, they speak for themselves. We've had 14 months of continuous retail improvement in our retail volume, and, that only happens because our message is getting out to the customer.
How hard is it to do a kind of basically to build on the patriotic image of Chevrolet and yet try and grab some of the coastal buyers, which don't always necessarily respond to the whole patriotic American image thing? How do you juggle that kind of message?
Well, Chevrolet's approach to going to market really isn't about being patriotic, but it is about tapping into the fact that, Chevrolet is a brand that, people have very, very positive and deep emotional feelings about. And, almost everybody, probably over the age of 20 has somewhere in their past where they have some memory of Chevrolet, whether, it's a vehicle that their parents had or a relative had. So that's really what the brand is about. It's really about recognizing that, the values of Chevy really connect with the values of people in the country. It's a brand that people can feel proud of. It's a brand that's very honest. It's down to earth. And, it's a brand that, it's attainable to everybody with a product that people can really be proud to own.
I will admit, growing up, did 10 years in the very way back of a Chevrolet Caprice Classic wagon, facing the wrong way, driving everywhere in that very far third row seat facing backwards. So it's part of my history as well.
And I think every family, has that history.
Indeed.
Well, I know that Margaret actually rode in the Sonic with me when I was driving it during the event. And one of the things we were talking about was their new approach to the millennials. And Margaret, we've had, I think I told you this during our drive, we've had a long discussion on Open Line off and on about the fact that, some millennials don't drive. Some millennials are overwhelmed by the price of new cars. And now with the Spark and the Sonic, you're looking at a demographic that could actually buy new. And you have a lot of really good ideas about how your dealerships are going to have to start talking to those millennials because they do shop differently, right?
Absolutely, they shop different, and really, we've been in the midst of a small car renaissance here at Chevrolet. It started a year ago with the Cruze. This year we just launched Sonic, and, then we'll be bringing out the Spark mini car in about mid-2012. And one of the things we've realized is that in order to sell to younger buyers, we really do need to change everything about how we do business. We put a lot of emphasis on training our dealers not just to understand the product, but actually to understand the customer. And in fact, we've worked with MTV to develop some training that all of our dealer sales consultants are going through that really help them understand this target market a little bit better. So that, when the younger customer comes in the door, the dealer realizes you talk to them. And, you don't talk to their parents. You don't talk to the friend that's with them. It's them. It's a purchase decision. It's really about treating that customer with respect. We've also done some training on how do you actually get these younger customers financed. One of the challenges that our dealers have reported to us is, they're in. They really want to adjust their businesses to bring in these younger customers. But they said, getting somebody financed who doesn't have a lot of credit history is difficult. So we've worked with our partner, GM Financial, and we developed some training on when these customers come in who don't have credit history, how do you actually structure that financial transaction so that when a bank looks at it, it's a lot easier to get it approved. So those have been some adjustments we've made in our business. And one of the things that it's important for our dealers to get on board with these customers is when you think about this customer, they're worth about $500,000 to a dealer if the dealer can get them while they're young and really earn their trust and their loyalty and their future business.
Yeah, there's about 7 cars, I think, on average that people buy in their lifetime, and if they can hook them in early, then they can keep that chain going to the next one and the next one and the next one. It's a lot cheaper to it's a lot cheaper to retain that customer actually than it is for the automaker to actually go out and try and steal them away from another brand as well.
Absolutely. So our strategy has really been about let's create products that are going to appeal to younger customers. Let's prepare our dealerships to understand those customers and to be able to respond to their unique needs. And then obviously in our own marketing and communications to speak to them in a voice that, feels like we're uniquely talking to that customer group. And then, of course, what we're doing here at SEMA by, really demonstrating how our new Chevrolet products are a great canvas for personalization. That's another way of further attracting these younger customers because we know, being able to customize is important to them.
And how many Sonics and Camaros are there on the SEMA show floor overall? Do you know?
Well, we actually have 20 Sonics that are on the show floor, and I believe we had 10 Cruzes between some GM cars and partner cars. And then Camaro, I don't think anybody can even count how many Camaros we had here. We did 4 of our own, plus we provided a large number of partner cars, and then there were an amazing number of companies that without any participation from Chevy on their own, went off and did Camaros, and the results really were fantastic. I don't think you could go very far, walking from display to display without stumbling upon, more Camaros. So, it really has been pervasive because, again, it's a car that so many builders just really love to work with.
Got a performance question. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Michelle.
Oh, I was just going to make the comment that it was kind of funny. I went outside today and was waiting for a friend to show up outside of the South Hall where registration is. And there's a Cruze with another grouping of cars, all by Giovanna, that does aftermarket wheels and, packages and all that they market through the dealers. And there's a Cruze out there right behind a supercharged Range Rover. And these 2 old guys sat down on the bench next to me, and they were like, one of them goes, "What is that thing?" And he goes, "It's a Chevy." And he goes, "But look at the lines." And it was so funny because, in some ways I see the Cruze as like just being like, it's just part of my vernacular now. I don't see it as being anything out of, different. But these guys, like, they'd never seen one looking like that. And they were so excited about it. It was really cute.
And we're still getting the word out, obviously, because Chevy's a brand that, really is in the middle of a transformation, and particularly with small cars. So, it takes time for people's perceptions to catch up with the reality of the products we offer today.
So one thing we haven't seen much of recently is any new SS models coming from Chevrolet. Are there any possibility we might be seeing any SS models of these small cars coming?
Well, we haven't had anything that we've announced to date.
Right.
But certainly having brands that, appeal to enthusiasts, obviously that's always been part of Chevy's DNA. Mm-hmm. And, we're going to always want to stoke that passion. And certainly, I think if you went through our stand, you could see with, the Camaros, with Sonic, with Cruz, that's where our sights are focused is, really on creating cars that enthusiasts will love and that enthusiasts can create themselves.
Chelsea, I guess, in the chat room is voting for a Volt SS. But
absolutely. And Tony is already well aware.
We'll strap some supercapacitors to the back of it.
But when you think about
a little.
When you think about the importance of having cars that are fuel efficient, I think Sonic is a great example of how you can have a car that's both fun to drive and fuel efficient all at the same time. With the 1.4-liter turbo, Sonic gets 40 miles a gallon on the highway, and yet at the same time, it's this great-looking, fun little car that can be customized, has great ride and handling, and again, we think that's a formula that is really, right for what today's customers would like to have.
Going forward, Chevrolet is really becoming the global brand for General Motors. We're seeing a lot more international influence in the brand. Even domestically, we're seeing some of the international influence. Are we going to see Chevrolet brand changing as it goes forward, as it becomes more of a global brand? I mean, here in the U.S., will we see maybe some different influences or different products that we might not otherwise have seen?
Well, I think one of the great things about being a global brand is that international influences, really can help shape the brand. Having lived overseas myself, one of the things that was really interesting to me is how the very essence of the Chevrolet brand kind of hits a chord no matter where you live in the world. There's something about the Chevrolet brand and the fact that, it's attainable to people that really resonates. And the fact that, Chevrolet, really stands for many of those great American values, kind of a sense of innovation. And, the fact that anybody can be successful, in a country like America. And those values resonate around the world. And another thing that's great about being an international brand is, we have engineering centers around the world. And it is just amazing how talented people are everywhere. And just like in America, when you put together a melting pot of people, you get ideas that are maybe more powerful than any culture by itself might come up with. I think we have the ability to tap into that in how we develop our products. And I think when you look at cars like Cruz and Sonic, the new Malibu even, those are the product of sort of that metamorphosis of ideas from around the world. It's really quite powerful what it can do for a brand.
Do you work very closely with a lot of the international operatives with General Motors?
Yeah, I mean, my role is to basically bring the voice of the customer into the product development process. And so I get to work with, engineering and design teams from all over the world as part of that. And it's really a great experience, and it's so interesting to see how we can share ideas and get better ideas as a result of that.
Excellent. Good stuff.
Wow. And so we were talking today actually about the entire idea of how the 40 miles per hour again, which keeps coming up. Why is that number so important?
Did you say 40 miles per hour?
40 miles per gallon, sorry.
That's okay.
We all like numbers, obviously, that round up. So ending in a zero is usually a good thing because it signifies a new threshold. And, if you went back not too many years, really, you could count on, a hand the number of vehicles that achieve 30 miles a gallon. 40 is the new 30. It's the threshold you really want to target in order to, really be in that club of, vehicles that really are very, very fuel efficient. And certainly Cruise is there with the eco model that gets an amazing 42 miles a gallon, with a car that is basically about $20,000. Sonic, it's the same story. 40 is sort of that thing that really gets the attention of customers. And where Sonic really comes into play is it's with a car that really is fun to drive. Obviously put the same engine that we use in the Cruise in a vehicle that's about 300 pounds lighter, and, you just get this very, very lively, tossable feel to the car. And it's tuned by, members of our engineering team who've actually worked on the Corvette team. So when they bring that passion for cars that they had on, really the ultimate enthusiast vehicle, and now they're bringing it to one of the, smallest members of the family, you put together a pretty important combination that, gets you a vehicle that is fuel efficient, it's affordable, but along with it, very importantly, it's fun.
With you talked a little bit about the customization possibilities, and I know that GM's put a lot of effort into the performance parts and a lot of the aftermarket parts to really kind of, for one thing, boost some dealer revenue. How deep will the modification possibilities go with some of the Chevy small cars? I mean, are we talking about really just basically stickers and a couple body kits, or are we looking at really some deeper things like suspension changes or even engine power upgrades?
Well, I guess it was at the New York Auto Show this year. We actually introduced a Sonic Z-Spec, and Z-Spec was a concept we showed last year at SEMA. We then announced at the New York Auto Show a Sonic Z-Spec and said, you know what, these parts we're going to have available this calendar year. We're on track with a number of parts, and it's really just the beginning. But you're going to, if you looked on the show floor today, we had 3 Sonic Z-Specs, we had a Cruise Z-Spec, and you're going to see that those parts are available for customers to buy, really in the next, 6 to 9 months. We're pretty committed to it. Otherwise, we wouldn't have started a branded parts line to be used on our small car portfolio. And I think you're going to see that as time goes on, it's going to be a really rich idea that we're going to be able to grow, and certainly it's going to go beyond, performance or appearance parts. And with our commitment to performance parts for within GM, I think you'll see that over time that's going to be a growth area even with Z-Spec.
Now Z-Spec's not replacing SS for some of the small cars, is it?
Absolutely, we would not replace trim levels that have been, near and dear to our hearts, like SS and RS. Z-Spec is really intended to be a branded parts line.
Okay.
And, we realize there's different kinds of customers. There's customers who want to get that special sport model, and they want to basically buy it stock from the factory. And then there are customers who want to create the car themselves, and maybe they'll buy some of those parts when they buy the vehicle and then add on later. Or, one of the things that happens often in the aftermarket is it's not until a car becomes, goes into the secondary market as a used car that it really gets customized, because that's when it becomes more affordable for younger buyers. And, some customers have been known to spend as much on their accessories as they did on the car themselves.
Now, something that you were saying, Michelle, what you'd seen at SEMA today was you're curious why people didn't have more of the older vehicles there with the customized parts.
Well, there are a lot of older vehicles here with it, but I mean, it's just with even like but they're older classics, right? It's not like a year or two old car. They're definitely like still focusing on older classics or just the absolutely brand new. And Margaret's talking about just the amount of accessories you can put on. I have to say, like Ricky Carmichael's SEMA car that he did of the Sonic was probably like one of the most realistic SEMA cars I've seen in a long time, because it was Ricky's a driver. He's an outdoor guy. He likes, mountain biking. He likes snowboarding, and he had his Thule racks on there with his mountain bike and his snowboard, and all the little parts that made the car look nicer to him. Which is, I could entirely see somebody investing in a Sonic and then adding on all of that stuff eventually.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of fun. I mean, the one with the roll cage inside. I I don't see too many kids pulling the the interior out and cutting it up and putting a roll cage in, but.
I mean, customers will do all kinds of things, but yeah, we really like the Ricky Carmichael concept. It's a great expression of Ricky, and he was very much a driving force in making the choices so that the car did express him. But yeah, it absolutely, he had the idea that he wanted a car that would really be what he uses, kind of for his weekend runabout to kind of, represent his lifestyle. And I think it really is a lifestyle that fits many people of his generation.
Yeah, it absolutely read that way. I mean, it came off as being an absolutely sincere, as did Dale Earnhardt Jr., by the way, did a 70s Chevelle SS conversion that also read as completely sincere. It wasn't like he just got given a car and told to go make it pretty, right? It really spoke to his tradition with the brand, and they were both really nice.
This service is provided by freeconferencing.com. Please enter your access code followed by the pound. This menu will repeat. Access code accepted. There are 7 participants in this conference. This conference is being recorded. Q&A session started.
That can be their everyday driver.
Indeed. Well, it's neat to see some of the stuff that's coming out from a lot of the small cars, and especially at Chevrolet. Absolutely.
Well, and Margaret, you actually, you've done a couple of tours with Chevy, of course, and been with GM for a while. You actually got to be at the studio in China for a bit, didn't you?
I did. I had the opportunity to work for GM China for 3.5 years in our sales, service, and marketing organization, and it really was one of those life-changing opportunities that really lets you see the business differently, and it helps me think about brands differently, and how you take care of your customers differently. And in my current role as a product marketing director, all the programs we do, we sell them around the world. And one of the things that Perspective does for you, number one, because we're developing our vehicles globally, it helps you interface better in a world, in a product development system that's global, and really think about language differences, or the fact that, even just the schedules that people keep, time of day, it's something you have to work around. And there's an empathy you develop. But it also, when I think about the Chevy brand and what it stands for in China, here we're celebrating our 100th birthday this week, but in China, Chevrolet is a very young brand, really only about 5 years old. And yet the meaning behind that brand is really the same. And, so again, there's this appreciation that we get for it. Or, when I think about the trade-offs we have to make in the product development community, I can be as much of an advocate for making sure we do the right thing to support the brand in growing markets as I am an advocate for, our customers here in North America. Because sometimes when you have that appreciation, you can see that middle ground that says, if we make choice, instead of choosing A versus B, we go to a different choice C. That might be a way of getting just a better overall result to help make Chevy stronger. So it really has been an important and many of them work for very really helps us understand the business better and run the business better.
That's really awesome. I mean, I just remember you telling me about that, and it makes so much sense that it's kind of like a tour of duty, right? And helping you to sort of understand the entire. I mean, you can't go global unless everyone sort of works globally, right?
Absolutely, and we all need that empathy. And there's nothing like boots on the ground to learn firsthand what's it like. So again, we've got a large number of people in our leadership, positions who've had that experience, and I think we have an important coaching and counseling role to play to help others understand the experience. And also, it's important to be able to be advocates, particularly if some of our markets aren't able to be present to represent themselves, to make sure that there's other people who can hear a discussion and say, I heard what you just said, but you know what? That might not be right for China, or here's what I think they might be meaning when somebody's trying to interpret a requirement for another part of the world that maybe they don't understand.
Yeah, absolutely. Very interesting. Well, Margaret, thank you so much for joining us. I know this has been like a hugely long 24 hours for you guys, but GM, I mean, you guys did so much from Chevy. I mean, this is a great show, actually. I have to say, it's great to see you guys having so much presence at SEMA this year. It feels different this year, actually. Don't you think it feels different? I think it does.
I think certainly the show overall feels different. For us at Chevy, this was really an important milestone. Obviously, with, this week really being the celebration of our centennial, we really wanted to use the show here to really signify what is Chevy going to look like in the next 100 years. And for us, it's a very bright and positive future. And, when you're 100 years old, you have to constantly be reinventing yourself and staying progressive and relevant. And, we wanted this to be the best SEMA show we've ever had. And I think we did what we set out to do.
You know what? We got one question from the chat room. And I think we didn't really talk a lot about this Spark, but I think this one will kind of sum this one up. Are there any plans to apply the Z-Spec concept to the upcoming Spark?
Yeah, Z-Spec is intended to be really a parts brand for our entire small car portfolio. The core of it will be Cruze, Sonic, and Spark. And we've had thoughts of even, maybe we do extend it to some of our other brands like Bolt. But Spark very much is part of our thinking here.
Fun. I can't wait to see the Spark, and get in it and have fun in it. I think it'll be, and the fact that it's also going to be electric, amazing.
Yeah, that's really, I think, going to be a great opportunity, and the car just lends itself so well to, being a great, electric vehicle that, people can use in urban environments. It's sized right. I think it's really going to get people to think different once again about Chevy and, our role in the small car market.
Well, that's probably going to be the least expensive electric car in production, right?
Well, we haven't announced pricing yet, but I would there's an opportunity to have a car, that's electric and affordable.
Yeah, well, we certainly have our fingers crossed.
Yes.
I hope so. I can't wait.
It should be very exciting.
Well, Margaret Brooks, thank you so much. We appreciate you taking the time to do this, and you're welcome on any time. It's always interesting to hear about new Chevy stuff.
Thanks. It's been fun.
Thank you much.
Well, if you guys have just joined us, this is Open Line. This is our monthly
Q&A session is over.
I'm Michelle Naranjo from Auto by Tel. This is Aaron Bragman, Senior Analyst from IHS Automotive, and Chelsea Sexton from ChelseaSexton.com, and Revenge of the Electric Car, the movie. We do this on the first Tuesday of every month at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, until everyone is tired of talking. You can join us if you call in. Now we're going to open up the line so you guys can talk to 712-432-0900, PIN number 911633. If you missed that, or you want to call in on Skype, or just participate in the chat room and listen to the stream, we're at bit.ly/open line. And tonight we've had John Krafcik, CEO of Hyundai North America, and Margaret Brooks, Product and Pricing Director for Chevrolet Small Cars, and lucky her, it includes the Camaro.
Camaro.
The Camaro's the hottest car of the year. You know that here.
The Canyonero, was it? Canyonero. We should also remind people that if you're not directly speaking, you should probably put your microphone on mute, because we're getting someone else's conversation in the background there for a minute.
That too. It's not fun. Sometimes it's nice to just, eavesdrop, though.
Sometimes. It can be interesting. You never know what you might hear. Yeah. Yep. Well, that was interesting. That was great that we had two really good guests on tonight.
I know, right?
Interesting people.
Honestly, from the SEMA floor, I could have picked so many more people, and I started overwhelming Ben, and I could tell I was overwhelming Ben.
Mm. You have to start lining up guests for 2012 right there.
Well, the instant I start having to send him the email from the showroom floor, going, "Hey, send so and so an email on how to get in," and I hear him going "Oh, I know I'm making his job harder, and I don't want to do that."
Yeah, but it's all for a good cause.
Yeah, it is. It's good. It's a good, fun show. And we could go to news. I'm actually going to take a break in a second. My friend Emily Miller, who is the off-road, she's one of the only women that's been an Ironman winner in the Vegas to Reno race. She does off-road stuff. But she has a PR company and she drives the Baja 1000. She endoed an H2 last year. Endoed it twice.
Yeah.
End over N twice.
Yeah, in an H2 yet.
Yes. She's actually going to be coming in here in a little bit just to chat with us when we're with everybody calling in. And sure. And she's also doing promotions for King of the Hammer, which is kind of a crazy event.
Every now and then your wife...
Never heard anything about it, so she was at SEMA to talk about four-wheeling stuff.
Every now and then it's kind of funny. Your Skype kind of fades out, and it sounds like you're just Fading.
And then what?
Every now and then your Skype
I'm
kind of
tired.
fades out. Michelle?
No, I'm here.
Okay.
I think it's this great hotel wireless.
Yeah.
Your conference recording has stopped.
I remember when I've stayed at this hotel so many times over the last 6 years, 7 years, something like that. And they actually used to have Cat 5s that you plugged in. And when I came in, like, they're just gone. And I used to travel with a Cat 5, and I don't now. And I probably would have to go down. I could probably go down and ask for one.
You can call them. They'll send one up.
Send one up immediately.
Yeah. Tell
and
them
Ben, email so-and-so.
Or tell them that you will broadcast from the hotel you are at and tell people never to stay there again.
Well, you know what the thing is? It's kind of funny because I'm trying to remember who it was. I think it was Johnny Lieberman one time was at an event. And where was it? I think it was in Vegas. Or no, who was it that was like uploading a bunch of pictures to publish an article? And the hotel cut them off. No, you know what? It was Ray Wirt, actually.
I think we're losing you. I can't understand.
And the hotel cut them off. Actually want people broadcasting.
Really?
Hello?
Hello? Hello?
Yeah? Hello? Hello?
Hello, I'm here. We had someone else join. Or not. Am I the only one here? Is Chelsea here still?
I don't know. Where'd she go?
I don't know. She ducked out. Well, if you'd like to call in and talk to us, please, by all means, call in and talk to us. We are starting to talk about the news. And, I see. Aaron and Chelsea, please do the news. I'm going to ask for a cable, says Michelle. So she's heading out to go downstairs and demand that she get a ground connection instead of actual over-the-air Wi-Fi. I said room service will send one up. You call the front desk and say, hey, you know what? Send somebody up there, especially if you're at one of the finer, higher-end establishments. I'm sure she's staying at the Wynn or maybe the Mandarin Oriental or somewhere lovely in Las Vegas. Not exactly sure where. But if you'd like to call in on Skype and talk to us about the Tuscany, she's staying at the Tuscany. I don't know what that is. I've only ever been to Las Vegas once, and I stayed at the Luxor. And SEMA in Las Vegas is at the Las Vegas Convention Center. Las Vegas Convention Center, which is a mammoth, sprawling place that I was able to go to once when I went to the Consumer Electronics Show. And I got all the walking done basically at that show that I ever want to do at a show like that. So right now, let's see, is Chelsea anywhere to be found? She must have run off to somewhere else as well. So anyway, you get me. I'm Aaron Bragman. I am a analyst for IHS Automotive, and we are about to start talking about the news of the world, things that are happening. And it's been an interesting month thus far in terms of what's going on in the industry here in Detroit. One of the more interesting things that happened is Consumer Reports came out with their latest reliability rankings. And it was great news for Chrysler and not such great news for Ford. Something that we talked about on the last show was the My Ford Touch system, the new telematics system that Ford is using in a lot of their different models that is basically either voice controlled or controlled by a touch screen or controlled by these buttons on the instrument panel that aren't actually buttons. They're just touch sensitive places on the instrument panel that you touch. It's been kind of a controversial thing for Ford. Some people love it, some people get it, and unfortunately a whole lot of people don't get it. And they're really starting to get kicked in the reliability numbers that way. A lot of the survey respondents to Consumer Reports didn't rate it all that highly, unfortunately. And that is really something that Ford is aware of, but the bigger question, I think, here is not even so much is Ford having an issue, but I really do question a lot of the Consumer Reports methodology, quite frankly. And we look at this from a couple of different angles. One of the big ones is where everybody else falls on this ranking list. Last year, just to take the most extreme example, last year Porsche was number 2 on the list. An extremely high placing. I think it was still behind Scion. Scion, I think, maintained its number 1 standing, but the Porsche brand was at number 2. And in the most recent rankings, Porsche was second from the bottom. So we're supposed to believe that in 1 year, they basically have fallen from second best in the land to second worst in the land. And when you dig a little bit to find out exactly, well, how did they do that? We find out that it was really more about the Consumer Reports testing methodology, the survey methodology, than it was actually any kind of foible at Porsche. Although they did say that they tested basically, they had data for 2 models of Porsche in the most recent surveys. And one of them was the Cayenne, and the Cayenne apparently had a really terrible year in terms of reliability. But when you look at the 911, 911 has been traditionally extremely good in terms of reliability. So when we see something that extreme happen in the span of 1 year, we do get to questioning exactly what's going on with a lot of these rankings. And we do know the Consumer Report does not like the My Ford Touch system at all. They have basically banned it from the beginning, which I find interesting because whenever they talk about it in the publication, they don't often talk about the various ways of using it. They only talk about doing it via touchscreen, and not actually the fact that you can keep your hands on the wheel, push one button, and talk into the air. So that kind of sticks in my craw a little bit with Consumer Reports. The good parts of Consumer Reports basically were the rankings that we saw for Chrysler. And that's not entirely undeserved. I've spoken at length with Chrysler's Vice President of Quality, a guy named Doug Betts, and the changes that he has made at Chrysler in the past 3 or 4 years now, since he got there from Nissan by way of Toyota, actually Toyota by way of Nissan, have been pretty transformational at Chrysler. It is really quite extraordinary to see what they have done to change just everything about their quality organization. They've added entire layers of testing at the automaker that weren't there before. They're doing a test now called the 336 test, which basically they take a pretty significant sample size of vehicles before they get into production, or really soon after they're about to be into production, and they run them through the entire warranty period of the car, 3 years, 36,000 miles. Obviously an accelerated durability test, but still, it's something that they didn't do before, and they're apparently catching quite a lot of stuff. And using that in instant feedback to their engineers. Their feedback time at Chrysler in terms of finding problems is now measured in hours and no longer measured in years. It used to be that Chrysler, they'll admit to you, even a lot of their quality engineers, that they really didn't have a robust system in place for fixing the things that went wrong, either in the field through warranty claims or that they would find in development. So they really made some significant structural changes, and we're seeing it in the results. Consumer Reports rank Jeep as the most reliable American brand, and how unexpected is that, quite frankly? But it really is, I think, the numbers now starting to show what the efforts of what the quality people at Chrysler are doing. So it's one of the areas that we've been looking at. Other things in the news from this past month: labor contracts with the United Auto Workers. Everybody finally signed one over the month, both at Ford, Chrysler, and General Motors. GM was first, obviously. They had the new contract that was nicely lucrative for a lot of their members. No pay increases for the current members across the board. None of the big three give out a pay increase to their current members. The Tier 2 employees, the ones that are being hired in at lower wages, are getting a bit of a wage increase. There are also some signing bonuses and everything, but GM ratified their contract. The workers at GM ratified it fairly quickly and fairly easily. At Ford, not so much. And then at Chrysler, it was really a squeaker to determine whether or not the UAW labor contract was going to get ratified. So the contract basically came down to a Chrysler, skilled trades workers versus hourly workers. Skilled trade workers did not approve the contract. They rejected it, while the normal hourly rank and file approved it. So the fight came down. It was pretty close. And according to the UAW contract, as long as everybody, a simple majority, was approves it, then it would actually pass, which is interesting because if it hadn't passed, it would have gone to arbitration, and that would have almost certainly come out in Chrysler's favor. Or potentially, I think it would have probably gone up for another revote. They would have sent it back out to the rank and file, I said, and probably with a do-over saying, are you really sure that this is how you want to vote? So that was all signed, and I think it's really going to be helping out GM and Ford, at least it should be, in terms of credit ratings, because they are now being viewed as having one more risk element off the table. And that has really helped their financial standing. You wouldn't know it by some of the stock performances today because everybody took a bath today. GM, I think, was at one point down 10% in one day in terms of their stock price, which is the lowest, one of the biggest drops it's seen since the IPO over a year ago. And even Ford was feeling it too, largely just because of the Greek debt crisis, of all things. So, with market volatility, we're seeing that happen with the automakers more and more. Let's see. It's kind of lonely being here by myself. Anybody out there?
I'm out here.
There you are, Chelsea. I was just rambling on and on. Didn't know where you went.
You were doing a great job. It was fantastic. You're carrying the whole thing.
I don't know how Rush Limbaugh does it. Sits there and talks to himself over and over and over again, day after day. Maybe I need some oxycodone.
You guys just need to jump in and join us.
I'm wondering where everybody is.
They're all hiding in the chat room.
They are hiding in the chat room.
Anything we're looking forward to at the LA Auto Show?
Yes, there's this really good Thai restaurant called Palms Thai that I go to whenever I get to LA. It is the most fantastic Thai food I have ever had. And the great place about this restaurant is that they have a Thai Elvis impersonator. Have you been there, Chelsea?
I have not, but I'm thinking we have a date.
Oh my God. I'm going there Monday night because I have to get there once at least, a year when I go in for my for the LA Auto Show. It is just something you have to go to. And the guy is good. He's really quite good. He does better Elvis than I could ever do. And he dresses like Elvis. He dresses like Elvis, and the thing is that he looks like Kim Jong-il if Kim Jong-il did Elvis impersonations. Right down to the glasses and the spiky hair. It's really something.
Oh, I think there's going to have to be pictures of this.
Oh, absolutely. But I think Klaus was probably talking about in terms of cars.
Probably. It's just a guess.
Yeah. Well, I'm actually going to be seeing one of them tomorrow. The Ford Escape. They're having a preview of it tomorrow at Dearborn, which is why I'm probably going to be on this call for about another 2 hours, so I got to get up early.
I thought Escape was going away.
No. Escape is shifting its production location. They're making it in Kansas City. Now they're going to make it in Louisville. It's getting a little different. It might be a little bit smaller. It's on the Focus platform now, and so it's a C-Compact crossover.
But it's not the C-Max.
It's not the C-Max, no. It's bigger than a C-Max. But it's basically using, I think, a lot of the same platform. I think it's way bigger, though. It's maybe a little bit smaller than the current one, but still a good size. And we're getting an embargoed preview of it tomorrow at Ford, which should be pretty cool.
Uh-huh.
We saw
I think a lot of folks I know think it went away completely since they killed the idea of the plug-in.
For the Escape?
Yeah, because they had made some plug-ins.
Grand C-Max went away. They didn't do that, and they're not doing the plug-in because they're doing an EcoBoost Escape. And apparently,
they're doing the plug-in C-Max instead, so I'm sure that's taking.
Right. And they're going to make the C-Maxes. They're basically their independent hybrid models. Yeah.
It's a bubblier.
What do you think about that strategy? I mean, you're closer to a lot of the EV and hybrid market than I am. Do you think that they could make a go of it with their own individual hybrid model, like Prius style?
Yeah, I mean, the problem is Ford's problem has never been building decent hybrids.
Yeah.
It has been marketing. I mean, they've had a couple of the better hybrids of the entire hybrid technology for quite some time now. And, the Escape was good and whatnot, but they have never been able to get out of their own way. And it's so much worse on the plug-ins. It's amazing. They're weeks away from Focus EV production, and no one has driven it. And they're releasing pricing tomorrow, but the thing looks like a cobbled-together conversion, which it kind of is. but they've done nothing to have any sort of outreach the way that they do with their hybrid program. And it's the same thing with Toyota. They couldn't be closer to their previous folks. It wouldn't occur to them to speak to one of the people who's driven the old RAV4.
Strange.
Yeah, it's wild.
You think that they're just maybe kind of concerned about what its performance is, or just?
I think part of it's misunderstanding of the market and the history and the industry, and how the expectations are different with respect to this technology because of the bloody history of EVs. And there's very much, setting aside even consumers, in the industry, there's very much an attitude of, if someone we know and respect hasn't seen it, touched it, and driven it, it doesn't exist, whether you're Ford or Fisker. I mean, there's too many that we've seen be announced and never happen. Yeah. And so size of company doesn't buy you anything in this space. But to be this close and not have, anything is kind of amazing.
Yeah, I mean, we saw the Chrysler effort just basically smoke and mirrors fizzled out when people got too close to it.
It was the very definition of you can build one of anything.
Yes. I mean, we knew it was bunk when they told us how big the battery pack was.
Of course.
It's like, really?
When we saw what cars they did, I mean, it was never going to happen.
I mean, $60,000 battery pack alone.
That's what that's for Elon to do.
Exactly. Right. But in terms of what you're looking forward to at LA, what else is coming to LA? There's going to be some. What can we talk about that's coming out there? Got to think about what we're going to see. Most of the stuff I know that we're going to see is happening in Detroit. For LA.
Yeah. So what's happening in Detroit?
Oh, all kinds of stuff. There'll be a new Lincoln concept. What else is coming? We're going to see new Cadillac. What else is coming? Interesting stuff. There's always something good.
Yeah, well, no, but they always duke it out between who gets what in those two shows.
They do, and it's not going away anytime soon that way. But I mean, they're two different markets too. I mean, you get two different sets of attention for LA and Detroit. I mean, Detroit really, quite frankly, still is the big international attention getter for the domestic auto industry. And LA is a little bit different because it's a place where the Japanese brands in particular, and the foreign brand, like Korean brands too, can kind of get out from underneath the Detroit 3's shadow. So we've seen them really use that as kind of their own show. And in fact, you know what? It's a good segue into one of our news topics here. Suzuki has withdrawn from the LA Auto Show. They're not going. They're saying their limited marketing budget means that they have to focus their efforts on shows that are more direct sales shows instead of large, glitzy, major shows like that.
Yeah, but if not here, where?
Exactly. They say they don't sell enough cars in California to make a show in Los Angeles worthwhile, and that kind of astonishes me given that is the Japanese car capital of the United States. I mean, if you can't sell the cars in California, where are you going to sell Suzukis?
Right.
I mean, you're not selling them in Missouri.
No, generally not.
No, Scott says he saw his first Kizashi on the road in Cleveland. I'm assuming he's in Cleveland. Scott in Cleveland. Kizashi is quite frankly the best car that nobody's driven. It's a fantastic little sedan. It's unusually priced for its size. It's smaller than its competitors, but it's also got a CVT that has flappy paddle shifters that, frankly, if you keep the engine on boil, it's a lot of fun. The all-wheel drive, the styling of it, the size of it, it's actually pretty decent, but nobody's driving it. And Suzuki, we have to really wonder if this is the beginning of the end for Suzuki. There's just nothing seem to be coming down the pipe in terms of product. We don't see the marketing effort. Like this kind of exact marketing effort is exactly what we're talking about. They're just not putting the same kind of attention back into it anymore that they really need to. Whereas, meanwhile, we've got Mitsubishi, who actually is making a kind of an effort and saw their sales up 50% this month. They just announced today. So
yeah, although they too are so strange in just how much they fancy themselves the underdog and this tiny little company with no resources.
Yeah.
And the excuses that they're letting that make for their own lack of decent marketing. I mean, it's certainly better than Suzuki, but I worry about them too, especially as they talk about diverting completely away from Evo and towards plug-ins.
Yeah. And converting the Illinois plant from the heart of the market, mid-size and vehicles and crossovers towards compact cars.
Right.
risky in many ways. And I'll tell you what else kind of ticks me off about Mitsubishi is the I.
Yeah.
How in the hell am I supposed to talk about that car in the plural?
Yeah. Well, we all still call it the iMeave, so.
We do too. That's what we have to. iMeave I can do, but.
Yeah. Of course, no one knows how to pronounce it.
Yeah, Mitsubishi I.
Yeah.
How many I's has Mitsubishi sold? How do you spell that? How do you type it? I''S would be possessive, yet IS says is.
Well, if a bunch of Priuses are pre-I'd, is a bunch of those the EI?
I. Oh dear. Oh, Michelle sends me a text. She says she's back but has no Cat 5 cable. Apparently, that is just old tech. They don't have that at the fancy establishment that she's staying in.
Ah, poor thing.
Scott in Cleveland says, what does MEEV stand for?
Mitsubishi,
it does stand for something.
Yeah, Mitsubishi Innovative Electric Vehicle.
There you go.
I'm such a geek.
That's what I thought it stood for. That's what I thought it stood for, I mean, frankly.
Yes.
What else
that's it.
But
I love that they had to make it larger because they thought our American butts were just too big for the normal one that everybody else drives in the rest of the world.
Some of us do have slightly larger American butts.
Yeah, but it's not that small, the Japanese one.
Well, didn't they? I thought they changed like the length of it more than anything.
Yeah, it's 8 inches longer.
Yeah, that's significant.
Inspires all sorts of jokes. 8 inches apparently makes a really big difference. And 4 inches wider.
In Japan?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Hey, I'm huge in Japan. What can I tell you?
I'm going to take your word for it.
Yeah. That's the catchphrase. I'm just huge in Japan, right?
Yeah, I'm curious about whether they're going to be able to. It's funny. It's a decent little entry level car, but I worry about the range and trim and whatnot.
And I'm just being a writer. I'm more concerned about how the hell do I talk about this thing in the plural. Same thing with BMW and their new I division.
Well, and everyone needs to stop ripping off Apple.
Well, they all need to stop doing this crazy, stupid, creative marketing garbage that they meaning anything innovative because of Apple, but the way Apple does it, it's iPod, iMac, iPhone, where there's an actual noun after I that makes it able to talk about. But.
Well, and the plug-in hybrid version that Mitsubishi is doing next so far is called the PX MEEV.
Oh Lord!
It doesn't get any better.
Better than the PO'd MEEV, I guess.
Yeah, well, when you have the smart ED, that's pretty hard to top. So.
Very true. Very true. We'd had a caller that called it. Someone in the chat room earlier wanted to talk about Honda, but I don't see that they've come back at all to talk about Honda. But Honda is one of the issues that we're talking about here. The Civic. I don't know if you heard about this, but John Mendel, the head of Honda in North America, basically has said that they're going to do a crash redesign of the Civic faster than they thought they'd need to. The refresh that was scheduled for 2014 has now been bumped up to 2013.
They have to. That car has just gotten panned.
It really has. There hasn't been a single outlet that I've found out there that has really thought this was a really good, a well-done execution of the Civic, a good update, but everybody has universally panned it. And I guess the pièce de résistance, as it was failing to get a recommended rating from Consumer Reports.
Absolutely. Well, it's been a staple of the market, and so it was just expected.
It's also one of Honda's 4 bread and butter models that really, bring in their earnings in the U.S.
Absolutely.
And it makes me really wonder how the new CR-V is. I haven't talked to anybody who's been at the CR-V drive, but CR-V intro has been going on in San Diego over the last couple of days. I haven't talked to anybody who's seen or driven it yet. But
me neither.
The pictures that I've seen look good. I will admit, a lot of them do look. The pictures I've seen actually do look good. The interior looks good. The exterior styling looks good. I mean, it looks demonstrably different than the old CR-V, unlike the old Civic, which looked basically the same as the new Civic. So hopefully that they've kind of learned their lesson with that. I understand that basically when the new Civic was up for redesign, it was the height of the Great Recession, and so they wanted to take a lot of cost out of it, make it a less expensive car, but Yeah, they took the cost out of it in noticeable places.
Absolutely.
You can't
Yeah, I mean, it looks like a drastically less expensive car.
Yeah, and feels and drives. You know, there's. Sorry, I had to mute my microphone for a second there because I had to blow my nose. Nobody wanted to hear that.
Oh no, I got booted again.
No, nobody wanted to hear that. I guarantee it. But yeah, let's see what else happened in the news here. We talked about Consumer Reports, which frankly, the methodology I question. Just, given Porsche's.
We usually do.
Given Porsche's issues. And, mid-sized pickups. General Motors confirmed that they're going to build the new mid-sized Chevrolet Colorado at a plant in Wentzville, Missouri that currently makes great big trucks and vans, which is kind of running against industry trends. Ford and Chrysler have both said they're discontinuing the mid-sized pickup market. They're getting rid of their entries because they don't really sell that many of them. And to update Ranger would be, you'd have to get the global Ranger in there, and they think it's too close in size to the F-Series. So they're going to try and capture that market with less expensive models, and they're doing it fairly successfully. Chrysler, for one, apparently has been doing fairly well with some stripped-down yet value-priced versions of the Ram Express and the Ram Tradesman. Both are apparently aimed at younger buyers for like $22,000, $23,000. You can get a pickup with a V8 engine in it and some decent styling and body-colored bumpers and fancy mirrors and a nice sound system. So apparently that's what they're going to go for.
But when you watch GM keep 2 truck brands out of 4 brands, they really have no option but to keep a fairly expanded truck offering. I mean, they have said specifically where their bread and butter is.
Yeah, it makes some money. I mean, that's where a lot of the profits are. You really can't compare when you look at a Spark versus a Sierra. The profit margin on the Sierra is basically several Sparks.
Yeah.
In terms of revenue.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, they make a lot of money there in doing that. And frankly, there was a lot of question about keeping GMC. And
there should have been.
Yeah, but you know what? It makes them money. It makes them a lot of money for very little investment, which is really the only reason to keep it. And it gave the dealerships, the Buick dealerships, something else to sell. Because in terms of profitability, it would have basically taken, if they got rid of both GMC and Pontiac, it would have taken that whole sales channel of the Buick, Pontiac, GMC dealerships.
Oh yeah, it kills the PBG dealerships, but still, to keep 2 brands that are basically carbon copies of each other.
Yeah, but you know what? They sell, which is all that matters to them. That bottom line, they're profitable. For a minimum investment in some of these Chevy trucks, you can get a whole new buyer and another 25% volume out of your plant.
Yeah, we'll see.
It works.
See how it works out long term.
It works. Well, they'll have to go somewhere a little bit different with GMC than with Chevy. And from talking with some of those people, they're going to do that. I mean, we'll see some new stuff coming like Granite. The new GMC Granite that's coming is pretty sweet. It's a small little B segment. That was actually just featured in a Microsoft video of all things.
Wow, that's well, that goes back to the whole Apple versus Microsoft thing.
Exactly. Well, no,
where GM lands.
It was an interesting video that I'd posted on my Facebook page of the world in 2019, and in terms of how Microsoft Office sees it. And that's just how everything has a video screen, everything is connected, everything is done via the cloud, and it's a really slick video. And it basically features this woman being picked up at Johannesburg Airport and chauffeured to her hotel in the back of GMC Granite.
Wow.
Kind of neat. It looks all futuristic and stuff.
Well, I think they're right on the connected part, but...
Some of the technology looked pretty interesting, too. I compared it to, I don't know if you remember, back in the early 90s, AT&T did a series of commercials called You Will that were basically, asked you, you ever send a fax from the beach? You will. And I compared the two of those. I compared the old AT&T style visions of the future with the Microsoft visions of 10 years down the road.
Yeah.
It's a very different ambiance. The old ones were all very Blade Runner-y and very dark and kind of brooding. But the technology that they were talking about has 90% come true.
Yeah. Although at this point it's, who still sends a fax?
Yeah, well, it's in terms of the thing is they did it on what looked for all the world like an iPad.
Yeah, sure.
So the iPad sent the document from the beach. It's like, oh yeah, we do that all the time. The only one that they didn't get right was, have you ever tucked your baby in from a phone booth? And the woman walks up to this phone booth and makes a video call and tucks the baby in. And the big question now, like, what the hell's a phone booth?
Right, exactly. I'm not sure my kid would know what one is.
Exactly. So even a payphone. What's a payphone, really?
Yep.
Not happening. So how about what you driven lately?
I have driven the new I, the production version. I don't get to drive, as many different things as you do. But and I had a Leaf for a few days, which I've driven before, but I lived with it for a bit, and backed that up against a GTR. So it was quite the apples and oranges experience for Nissan.
I'm jealous. I haven't driven a GTR yet. I've bugged Brian Brockman about that for ages and still haven't gotten in one.
Well, you know what? I have decided, because I'm known for my right foot, they took a little bit of pity on me, and I actually got the GTR before I ever got myself in a Leaf. But it is the automotive equivalent of a 13-year-old boy. It is totally hormonally imbalanced. Yes. It's not the least bit subtle, and it's happiest and going fast.
Yeah.
But around town, not so much. And it's a rough little car. It really is. And I thought in a good way. My husband, not so much.
So where did you take it? Take it anywhere fun? Do anything cool with it?
I took it out and drove it mostly in the wee hours and on, lesser crowded LA freeways and whatnot.
That's the only time you can drive in LA. The wee hours.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Interesting. Very cool. So what did you think?
Yeah.
How was your Leaf experience?
Oh, my computer.
The Leaf is fine. I had driven it before. It's a really competent little Gen 1 car. Mm-hmm. No question. It's, my only issue with it is that until you're inside it, you actually have to look at it. But once you're there, it drives fun, and I wish, all of them would learn to under-promise and over-deliver on range and charging time. Because it really is like a 70-mile car for most people rather than 100. Yeah. But overall, it's a good little car. And then the other thing I got to drive fairly recently was the Yokohama Pikes Peak record-setting EV.
Really?
And that was pretty hot.
I imagine so.
That was awesome, lots of fun.
Where did you get to drive that?
We did a closed course in Anaheim Stadium. And they decided to let just a couple of journalists review it. But the criteria was that anyone who drove it had to be under 5'8" and under 140 pounds.
Well, it ruled me out.
It ruled out Chuck at Wired, too, so he called me. So, yeah, it was just a couple of us, both women, out there just laying down as much rubber as we possibly could in that parking lot. And it was a lot of fun.
That's outstanding.
It was.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. What have I driven? I drove...
You drive manly man stuff.
Sorry?
You drive manly man stuff.
Yeah, a couple of things. Obviously, as we talked about earlier, I drove that Chrysler 300 SRT8, which has basically rocked my world and everyone in my office. It is just a phenomenal car. Brutal power delivery, but still a lot of fun. But that's not the only thing I've driven from Chrysler. I also drove a Ram 1500 Tradesman 4x4. They sent me a pickup truck that is basically the basest base model pickup truck you can buy. It's a workman special. It had crank windows.
Wow, those still exist, huh?
They did, and I took some young people around it, and they were like, "What? How do you work the windows?" You got to crank this thing. I had to show people how to work the windows. It had manual locks, which on a truck this big is just frankly a pain in the butt because you really have to stretch to open the door from inside the cab. But other than that, for $28,000, a V8, four-wheel drive, long bed. I think the only option it had was air conditioning and a sliding rear window. But it was still kind of fun in a primitive kind of way. I wanted to put a blinking yellow light on the top and put a City of Ann Arbor sticker on the door, and I could have parked it anywhere I want to downtown Ann Arbor.
So.
Yeah, nobody would have batted an eye. It had an M plate on it, so the plate was already a little bit weird. If it had a City of Ann Arbor sticker on the side, a flashing yellow light, hey.
Done. Perfect.
Not a problem. And then I also got to drive the Buick Verano, the new compact Buick that is coming. They had a press launch in Portland, Oregon, which is rapidly becoming one of my favorite parts of the country. But Verano was really quite surprising. It's a really nice little car.
It's gotten some good comments, yeah.
Yeah, it really has. And I was worried that it was going to be kind of a warmed over Cruze, Chevy Cruze kind of thing, just some badges, some sound deadening, but really, it's a completely different vehicle. It feels very sophisticated, very upmarket, very European. I was really quite surprised by the thing. Now the big question is, who is going to buy it, and what are they going to shop against it? Because it's kind of in a class by itself at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
There's really nothing for the price and that level of premium content in that size category. I mean, you start thinking about a Mini Cooper, really, is the only thing priced that way. And this is obviously significantly bigger than a Mini Cooper. But
right. But it's interesting the way that GMs go in that direction.
They are. And I
think
in
trim and fit and finish.
And it's going to be, I think, an early arrival to a segment that really hasn't been born yet, but is coming in the next 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to see the new Audi A3 come in sedan form instead of the hatchback form that it currently is. It's going to be a little bit bigger, and it's going to be priced pretty much the same way. Acura is supposed to be coming up with a new sub-TSX model, maybe a CSX or maybe an Integra. I'm not sure what they're going to call it yet. But it's also going to be that kind of genre. Mm-hmm. Really, the closest thing to it right now is an Acura TSX, and it's quite, I think, an interesting matchup between the two. I actually think the Buick is better executed. But in terms of the price, it's going to be a big challenge.
Yeah, although they're definitely they're aiming at stealing from the other brands, no question.
Yeah, had someone else chime in?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just curious what your feelings are about the Buick Verano Turbo. It should be another $2,000, I think, and it should have 250 horsepower out of that Turbo 4, the 2-liter. And I was wondering if you thought that was going to be a big win.
I think it'll be a fantastic car. I don't think they're going to put 250 horsepower in it, because that would probably... No, that would put it really close to the output of the Buick Regal GS. I have a feeling you're going to see it probably close to 220 horsepower, which is what the Regal Turbo puts out. So it's they can make, obviously, 250 or even 275 in the 2-liter. It's all just a matter of chipping the turbo to make more boost. But if they put it up around 250, that's really gonna embarrass the Regal GS because it's a much lighter car.
No, but the Regal GS is going to go to 300 like in a year.
Yeah, we'll see. Maybe.
That's what they said. And then the Verano Turbo could come in at 250, because the basic Buick Regal Turbo with 220 is like an older design. That's what I heard.
I hadn't heard that, actually.
I had heard that when I was at the show, when I was speaking to the people who obviously are not as well informed as you, they had told me it was a 250 horsepower power plant turbo Verano. And I was excited because I saw that car in that cocoa brown.
Yeah.
And it's really a very attractive vehicle. I mean, it's not
sharp.
really the market segment that I shop, but what I would say to you is it was very exciting. As a daily driver, it would be quieter. It's relatively inexpensive.
Yep.
And if it had 250 horsepower, it seems like it'd have a lot of scoot to it.
It certainly would. The interesting thing will be to see if you can modify one to make more power like you can with some of the Volkswagen engines. I know with the 2-liter TSI that goes into a lot of the Volkswagen Audi products, really the only difference between a 200 horsepower GTI, and then actually that engine is available in like 180 horsepower in the European market, all the way up to 280 some odd horsepower in the Audi TT-RS. It's just turbo chip. It's just how they tune the actual motor and the turbo itself. And you can actually get it done at a number of aftermarket shops. You go in, they plug their special computer into the EEPROM port in the cockpit. A couple buttons they push, boop, now you've got new software in your ECU, your engine control module, and it makes 280 horsepower. It's remarkable. But for the Verano, the output they were talking about to us was 220 roughly, because they don't want to really start to intrude on the performance possibilities for Regal, and it's already going to overlap Regal in terms of price a little bit. But the comments you made are exactly spot on with what Buick is telling us. in that they're considering this vehicle for people who basically want something that's comfortable, but not necessarily huge or not necessarily pricey, but who are just somebody who wants some good transportation that's very comforting, that's coddling, that's sophisticated, but not flashy. So it's interesting to hear you say that. That's exactly what they're aiming for.
What do you think Ford's going to have to compete with it?
Lincolns. There'll be some interesting new.
But I thought they canceled the little Lincoln.
I think they've not exactly said what they're going to do with the little Lincoln yet. I've seen some of the new Lincoln products that are coming out. I can't really talk about some of them, but I have seen the new MKZ that we're going to be seeing at the Detroit Auto Show in concept form, and it's going to be remarkable. I think what you see some of these Lincolns doing. They're right now a brand very much in transition, very much like Buick was. They're obviously behind the game in terms of where Buick's at, but they've got some very interesting stuff coming. They've stolen Max Wolf, who is one of the guys responsible for Cadillac, the way Cadillac looks right now, and brought him over to Lincoln. He's heading up Lincoln Design. So they've got a chief designer. They've got a whole design team now, 90 plus people in their design studio. They have a design studio. It's a specific Lincoln design studio. They're creating basically a brand within the overall Ford hierarchy. Lincoln is no longer sharing a lot of these kinds of things with Ford anymore. So I think you'll see some very interesting things coming from Lincoln. Whether or not they're going to arrive in time to make much difference is a big question, because it's a lot of these Lincoln dealers are going to be struggling with the loss of Mercury. So if they can't pair up with a Ford dealer, it may be some lean times until Lincoln can really get their design mojo going, and that's still going to be a good 3-4 years before you start to see the really new design language from Lincoln. Until then, it's going to be some stuff in transition.
Do you think it's Ford's way of thinning the herd?
It's possible. It's
the only way they could actually cut down the dealer network size to actually allow the dealers that exist after the final product finally hits, that they won't have that price competitiveness right now. Right now, the way it's set, or years ago, the way it's set, somebody drove 10 minutes from one Chevy dealer to the next to get the best price.
Right.
And by thinning down the herd, they were able to cut that portion out a little bit. And it could be Ford is actually doing the same thing with Lincoln, except they don't have to give them any money. They're just saying, hey, we want you to invest $1 million in your dealership, and we're not giving you really any new product. And if you go out of business before we finally get the rest of our product out, so we don't really care, because the guys that are left will be more profitable, and the better profitability that a dealership has, the better they treat their customers.
To some extent that may be, but the thing is, there's really no pattern necessarily to say that the dealerships will be able to follow that. A lot of what Lincoln really wants to do with their dealerships is get them into the urban areas, more so than the rural areas, despite the fact there are probably a lot of rural dealerships that do very well for Lincoln. That's really not what they want. The luxury buyers are primarily concentrated in the urban areas, and that's really where they're trying to focus the new dealerships. And that doesn't mean that they wouldn't fail in urban areas faster than they would fail in rural areas. It may even fail faster. So I'm not sure that we can point to that. It's an interesting idea for sure, but unfortunately it's hard to. You'll never get anybody afford to admit to it.
No. I would expect this conversation, but it was interesting. What's your feeling about Honda revamping the Civic, or planning to do a mid-cycle refresh so shortly after just releasing the new product? I mean, do you actually believe the Japanese took the path that Detroit took in the 1990s, where they did their model line makeover in a cheap way, much in the way Detroit did in the 90s, because of the rising yen to the dollar?
That is one of the reasons they've done it. I mean, we've seen it at Toyota, we've seen it at Honda.
But it failed with the Detroit 3 in the 90s, so why would they follow that formula?
Well, they have the mentality.
The Koreans are kicking their butt.
They have the mentality that they can do it better, that they can actually make it work and make it stick. And frankly, in many cases, they really have no choice. They have to take cost out of the vehicles. And the thing is, they've taken cost out of the areas that you don't see, to the point now where they're starting to take cost out of the areas that you do see. They've cut basically all the fat from a lot of these cars, and now they're cutting away muscle. And it's starting to show very obviously. And the new Camry, I think, is an excellent example of that. I work with somebody who came from the company that provides the instrument panel for the new Camry, and she basically told me that the new instrument panel is 33% cheaper on the new 2012 Camry than the one that it replaced, and that is an astonishing price drop. And the thing is, when you sit in the new Camry, you can feel it. Unfortunately, the knobs, the HVAC control knobs, they shift. You could bend them, you could move them in the seats. The design of the thing doesn't flow into the doors at all. There isn't any soft plastic on the interior, hardly at all. It's almost all hard plastic.
So who heard them more, the Koreans or the rejuvenated American brand?
Well, the thing is, the Koreans are getting a lot of the attention because they've got some pretty flashy designs, but in terms of competition, the Americans have the volume, and they have the dealer network, and they present basically a resurgent American auto industry that's now completely profitable at much lower volumes, that doesn't have to put a lot of cash on the hood to sell cars. I mean, you look at Ford. It's a complete role reversal of what it used to be this past year in 2010. It used to be that Ford GM cars would sell on the deal, and you'd have Toyotas selling on their merits. It's been the exact opposite recently, where you've got huge, massive incentives to move Toyotas, and you've got Ford selling on the transaction price for the Fiesta is $18,000 is the average transaction price. That's higher than the Corolla or higher than the Honda Civic.
So their profit per vehicle is so good, and they're profitable at 10 million units. Their percentage share of 10 million or 11 million units a year. The fact that we're running close to 12 and 13, if their share stays identical, their profitability is much greater.
Absolutely.
That's pretty much it.
That's one of the reasons, yeah. And
what about Volkswagen? I mean, a buddy of mine just was shopping a car last month, and he basically depended on me. So I said, all right, let's look at it. He needed something relatively inexpensive on a lease deal. So the subsidized lease deals were the Honda. What's that truck they have? I can't remember.
The Ridgeline?
No, not the pickup, but the SUV.
The Pilot.
The Honda Pilot was $600 down, $309 a month. The Honda CR-V was $600 down, $239 a month.
Nice.
And he was like, you know what? They were like, free. The best deal was Volkswagen now. They had the CC. That's like the sleeper lease deal out there. It's a $33,000 vehicle that they're subsidizing the lease deal. That's $600 a month, $270. The $600 down, $279 a month with full leather, heated seats, Bluetooth, the whole deal. The turbocharged 200 horsepower motor and the DSG transmission for $279 a month.
Not bad.
That was a hell of a deal. It was better than the Buick. I was trying to get him into the Buick Regal Turbo, but the deal from Volkswagen was better. And he liked driving it, so he went for it. But Volkswagen's on a tear. The Jetta, the transaction prices are as high as they were when they were supposedly the better Jetta. Because people are going in with the $16,000 lead-in advertised price. But by the time they're walking out the door, it's the same price as the last Jetta was transacting at.
Yeah.
And the Passat was up 952% last month.
Yeah.
From last year.
And the new Passat is actually, people have panned the new Jetta, but the thing is, it's still probably one of the nicest cars in its class. It may not be as nice as the old Jetta was, but it's considerably cheaper, and it's still nicer than a Corolla, quite frankly. It drives better, it's got a better interior, it's got a diesel engine, for Christ's sakes. The Passat, though, I think is really going to be the surprising one for people. They sold 5,000 units of Passat last month, which is not an insignificant number for a fairly new vehicle. And it's a decent car. It's not nearly as dumbed down as the Jetta was from the old Jetta. The new Passat still is almost as nice as the old Passat in the way it drives and the interior materials. It's bigger in terms of interior comfort. It's got a massive back seat. But I think they're going to do really well with it, and they kind of have to. They have that new plant in Chattanooga, and they got to fill it up with something.
Can't you option up the new Jetta so that it has the same performance, as the old Jetta?
You can get the GLI, the GLI is got the fancier rear suspension. It's got the nicer interior. So yeah, you can actually get a new Jetta that is as nice as an old Jetta. It'll cost you some money. It's as much as a GTI. So you're looking at mid to high 20s, but it'll do the things the old Jetta does, and it's much more of a pleasant drive. So. When I talked with Jonathan Browning at Volkswagen at the Chicago Auto Show last year, he says that's really one of the regrets that they had when they introduced the new Jetta, is that they didn't introduce them all at the same time to let journalists know that, yeah, you can get the cheap Jetta that's $16,000, or you can get the Jetta you're used to for the old price that's, is just as nice as it ever was. So it's an area they're playing catch-up in, unfortunately.
Were you surprised that they took over the number one spot, or projected to take over the number one spot for 2011?
No. We have to remember that Volkswagen is a massive company, and they have an extremely strong presence in a lot of the developing markets, especially Brazil. And Volkswagen is still number one in China. They're the biggest automaker in China, and they've been there longer than General Motors has. So they have a big presence in a lot of these developing markets. They're small cars. I mean, you talk about a volume, they're mostly in the B and C segment categories, the subcompacts and compacts, but that's where most of the world buys cars, not in the larger segments like Americans do. So they're going to do very well with it. They probably won't keep it, although now... looking at the situation with Honda and Toyota and the flooding that's happening in Thailand, of all places, that's affecting their production globally. I swear to God, I don't know what the guys at Toyota and Honda have done to piss off the powers that be, but these guys cannot catch a break. They can't. To see what's happened to Toyota in particular in the last 3 years. Going from being, basically they were being considered as probably going to take over GM's spot as the largest automaker in the United States. Now, I mean, one thing after another, unintended acceleration, the global recession causing the market crash, the yen has gone through the roof, so they're losing almost $1 billion in profit from year to year. And now you have the earthquake and the tsunami, and then now we have flooding in Thailand that has inundated fully 1/3 of the country's landmass, and has shut down dozens of suppliers that are now shutting down production at Toyota plants all over the world. So just when they were about to get back on their feet, just when they were about to again start building cars, they can't. It's astonishing.
Now, have you driven the new Camaro ZL1?
I have not. It hasn't gone into the press fleets yet, but
okay.
I hope to at some point.
Are you looking forward to that one?
Yes and no. I mean, when you get to a point where a car is that powerful and that crazy, it's hard to use it, quite frankly.
Right.
There's very few places you can use a car like that to its full extent. That's one of the problems I had with the 300 SRT8 I just had for the weekend. It's great fun in very short bursts.
I have a Corvette
with
436 horsepower, which is now considered low.
Yeah, that's still healthy.
I got to tell you, you know what? The car, I use the car all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I have a smile on my face every time I drive the car. Yeah, 0 to 60 is 4 flat, but you want to know something? I do that all the time.
Is that a Z06?
I mean, no, I have the base model, the Z51. But it's 0 to 60 in 4 flat or 4.1 with the LS3.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm telling you, it's a nice car. The only thing I did was I put in an all Alcantara D-shaped steering wheel recently in the interior, and I put in leather padded console and armrests so that my touch points were all, in the summertime, you're going without a coat. So I made the touch points all nice and soft, soft leather. It was relatively inexpensive, and it really made it very nice.
Yeah, you've done basically what GM should have done years ago.
But you know what else I did that was really cool? I mean, I apologize if I'm going off, but
no.
I had the computer reprogrammed so that the throttle response was very much like the power boosters that they sold. But the guy did it because GM numbs down the first inch or two of the throttle pedal in these cars so that a person can go from a Malibu to a Corvette without killing themselves. So I just had a guy reprogram it so that it it's more linear in response, like the old cable systems. And it's really a blast. I mean, the thing is making power all over the place from the minute you touch the throttle. So that was my summer fun out of Carlisle. I did the 90 acres of Carlisle this summer for the first time with my son, and we had a really good time, and I had all this crap installed. But it's been exciting. I would tell you, though, you can use the power as long as you reprogram the throttle response so that you don't have to floor the damn thing to get some of the horsepower. Because that was the problem. A lot of the manufacturers with electronic throttle controls, what they do is they dumb down the first inch or two so that you don't kill yourself. You know, so Grandpa doesn't kill himself going from Malibu to a SRT 8. But if you reprogram that electronic throttle, it makes it a blast that you just like lean on it with your toe.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden the car's flying. It's really a lot of fun. So I recommend anybody listening who who's into fast cars, if you just reprogram the throttle, it gives you the power a lot quicker.
If you have,
otherwise you got to do like 180 before you to get the thrill.
Right. No, it's the 300 though. I mean, you don't have to put your foot in it very far to get some of that horsepower, and it's just the problem I have with it is that you're already traveling so fast that you have to slow down. That's my only issue. That's my issue with cars like that, is that when you put your foot in it, it's too late. You have to slow down now. There's very few places where you can really exercise them well on
what
this
do you think
side
of
the
CTSV?
Atlantic. I'm sorry, the what?
The CTSV coupe.
Oh, it's brilliant. Although
is that
honestly,
also one of the cars?
I would honestly wagon the CTSV wagon just for the novelty of it and the fact that
how many have they sold?
I don't know what the sales numbers are. I don't know if they break them out by model like that.
I don't think they'll ever make any money on it. Although I do think the V Series has outsold AMG and the M Series for BMW combined in their annual sales.
I have to look that up. I'm not sure that the...
No, I'll tell you, I was at the Monticello Raceway, and John Henry was there, and he told us, he said, the V Series from Cadillac has outsold both AMG and the M Series from BMW combined. That's how successful the V Series has been. I mean, let's face it, it's 30% less expensive.
Yep, that too.
So that's always... How about the C63? Have you driven one of those?
I have not driven the C63.
That should be exciting. That's 450 horsepower.
It's in the fleet and it's in the rotation. It just hasn't gotten to us yet because of Car of the Year stuff that they've been doing.
Now, where do I find your article so that when you do the AMG C63 vehicles or the ZL1, where can I find your article?
Well, we actually don't publish reviews. IHS is an economic forecasting company, so I get to do a lot of these drives and a lot of this media work because I talk about these cars in forums just like this and on TV, various local broadcasts, CNBC, CNN, NPR. But we are actually looking at starting to actually do some of these reviews, and we are looking at doing it in a blog format. So right now, there isn't actually a place where we can actually publish our reviews, but there may be coming up, and I'll probably announce it here.
Well, I'd love to read it. I look forward to it. Thank you very much.
Sure, absolutely. I see Chelsea in the chat room talking about... Toyota's arrogance. You with us, Chelsea?
I'm with you.
It is interesting, isn't it?
With arrogance.
Yeah, I've experienced this myself.
My friend that I was telling you about to buy the Volkswagen, he went to a Toyota dealer. He said he was there, there was like an ad in the paper, and before he called me, he ended up spending 3 hours in a Toyota dealer, and they were torturing him for like unbelievable amount of time that he finally left. Okay, I always say if you can't make the deal in 15 minutes, get the hell out. Yeah. So he was there 3 hours, and then he left, and they called him back the next day and said, yes, we're going to do everything, come back. He was there for another hour, and he finally stood up and he said, I'm never buying a Toyota. And he walked out. He said, I will never buy a Toyota ever in my life from the experience that the dealer did with him.
That's great.
So if that's what you're talking about, rife with arrogance, I have to say I agree. And the Volkswagen guys were perfect. I mean, they were perfect gentlemen.
I have had that same experience, although for me, when my own personal vehicle is a Volkswagen GTI, And I leased that through some Volkswagen programs, and it's frankly a fantastic vehicle. But I'll tell you how I got it. Is I went to a Mazda dealer, and I was all set to get a Mazda Speed 3. I had this was back when they were still owned by Ford, and I could get the Ford X-Plan through some friends and family deals. So I had the number for the Ford X-Plan discount. I knew that this dealer had the car I wanted on his lot. I mean, I checked the inventory. I knew it was there. I even saw it out behind the dealership. And I walk in, and I said, here's what I want. Here's what I want to do. Here's the payments I need, basically. I have the discount to do this. I'd like this vehicle. Here's my trade-in. And they were completely going to lowball me on the trade-in and try and roll. I mean, the trade-in was an old PT Cruiser Turbo, which was frankly a lot of fun. And we loved it because it was on a 0% loan. And it was actually worth considerably more than we owed on the loan. So, it was a pretty decent deal. They were trying to tell me that I still owed money after they valued this car, and that they wanted to roll that money into the payments of the new car. I'm like, you're out of your damn mind. And then I wanted to test drive it. They wouldn't let me test drive it. So I'm like, all right, that's fine. I left the dealership. I emailed the local Volkswagen dealer. I said, here's what I want. I want a GTI two-door with the DSG and no sunroof, and I want the tartan interior, and here's what I basically want to pay for a lease. And they said, yeah, sure, we can do that. No problem. And we'll get one from Grand Rapids, and if you want to come in and sign paperwork tomorrow, I'll be happy to do that. All over email.
I believe it. That's how I bought my Corvette.
Yeah.
I did it in one phone call, and then I said, okay, I'll be down in 3 hours with a check.
Yeah.
And I bought the car and drove it home. It was a great experience.
And
that's the way you can do business. I like to make fair deals. The guys are making money.
Yeah.
But I don't like these deals where they rip you off with the trade-in nonsense. It's ridiculous.
I mean, there are people out there, especially in Detroit, who know what they're talking about when it comes to the cars that they're shopping for. Sure. And when you get treated like somebody who doesn't know what they're doing or what they're talking about by a sales guy who's going through his shtick, it doesn't work. And it pisses people off, and it makes them go to the Volkswagen dealer and do it by email.
I bought a Cadillac CTS when they first came out, the 08s.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I told them I want the all-wheel drive, the split suspension, the 300 horsepower motor. I want this, and this. This is how much I want to pay. I said, give me this much discount off the MSRP. And in 15 minutes, they were like, fantastic. We ordered your car. It'll be in 6 weeks. I mean, that was the way to treat me.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Not any other nonsense. I'm very pleased with that vehicle. It's nice. My question to you is, how do you like the DSG in your Volkswagen? I love that stuff. Actually,
it was my last gen Volkswagen. I just gotten a new 2010 because the DSG got buggy as hell.
It did.
I was very disappointed with the DSG. I took it back to the dealer, and I told them, I was like, there's an issue with the shifting. And they kept trying to convince me, oh, no, they all do that. I'm like, no, they don't. It's rough shifting in parking lot situations. It basically jackrabbits when you put it in reverse. You know, that surging when you put it in reverse or at very low speeds. I'm like, I know what this transmission is. Well, it just, it shifts differently than a normal automatic. Yes, I understand that. I just drove.
You had the car for 20,000 miles.
Yeah, so I told them, I said, I just drove a brand new press car. I know exactly how it feels, and this one doesn't feel like that. So they take it for a spin. Oh, no, this is perfectly normal. 3 months before I was going to turn the car in at the end of the lease, I get a recall notice in the mail for a special plastic collar piece on the DSG shifter that wears out and causes exactly the symptoms I was talking about.
Oh, God. So obviously the next model you didn't have. No,
I got the 6-speed in my current one, and I'm perfectly happy with that.
You like that. So you wouldn't recommend the DSG again, or you think it was just because it was early?
I don't know if it was been an early action sample, frankly. It was the first gen for DSG in that model, so I think they're working some of the bugs out. But again, I'd never recommend a Volkswagen off warranty anyway. So.
Well, now they give you free service for 3 years.
Yes, they do. That's kind of nice. I take my car in; it's all paid for. So it's.
My friend loves his CC. He thinks it's he's a little bit older, so he needed something a little more, a little different than the GTI. But the CC is a really nice car.
I considered the CC over the GTI, and they wanted, they wanted about $35, $40, no, $50 a month more for the CC over the GTI. This is back in about a year and a half ago, March 2009. 2009. Well, if
they ever ask you why the CC isn't selling, and why they have to subsidize the lease so it's 30% of the actual cost over the 3 years?
It's
because they have this stupid tray in the back. They need to get rid of the coffee cup tray in the back seat and put in a fifth seat belt.
You see, the people like it, though. People like the fourth. People are actually thinking the fourth seats.
I understand, but what I'm saying is the people who buy it like the four seats.
Right.
But the rest of the world that would buy it, that like the vehicle, are not buying it for greater market share because it doesn't have the fifth seatbelt.
Actually,
I'm telling you, there are so many people that wanted to buy the CC that I talked to, and the reason they don't buy it is because they need that fifth seatbelt in the back for the occasional, child friend.
Yeah, it's interesting, though, because in Europe, the fifth passenger seat is an option.
Yeah, it should be here, too, because
you can actually choose. Well, the thing is, here, they were pushing those people towards the Passat. So if you wanted the 5-passenger experience, they'd push you towards Passat. If you wanted the 4-passenger Scoopy Coupe, they'd push you towards CC. The reason you're seeing so many subsidies now is because it's nearing the end of its model cycle. And Passat's already made the switch to a new vehicle. CC, we're just not sure where it's going. We think CC is going to stay the same, but get a little bit of a facelift. It's going to still be on the old Passat one, and it's going to be a bit more premium than it is currently. It's going to be a bit kind of above Passat in this whole four-door.
I can tell you, for that $279 a month, you can't beat that deal with a step.
You really can't. That's
no
significantly. That's $100 better than it was when I went to talk to them about it, and it's because of the subsidies, and because when I went to get this car in March 2009, that was the height of the Great Recession. Nobody was leasing anything. Everybody was basically frozen because of it. So, but yeah.
Any news on the new Corvette?
Not yet. We're still waiting to hear. I hear that it's almost certainly going to be front engine.
Yeah.
That it's going to be lighter than the current model, and not necessarily more powerful. It's
going to have 8-speed automatic.
I've talked to Taj Yuchter, who is the head of the Corvette program, and he says basically they've pretty much reached a point where adding more power to the Corvette really doesn't make much sense. That giving it improvements in terms of lightweight materials and efficiency gains are going to get you better performance, and you don't need a bigger engine to do that. So.
Well, right now they weigh about 3,100 pounds.
Yeah.
32, 31. For a vehicle with 450 horsepower, they probably get about 100 pounds out of the vehicle, maybe 150. That's usually worth about a tenth of a second in a quarter mile, and maybe the same in 0 to 60. That's what you're really going to see a gain in, other than probably launch control and transmission technology. And then the rest will be made up in handling and looks. I think the looks are going to be a lot sweeter with Ed Welburn and his team. I think they've got a beautiful C7 ready to roll out, and that's going to be the driving force for most Corvette enthusiasts, is to buy the car because it looks so damn sweet. I think you're probably right. They're going to come in at 450 on the base vehicle with the 5.5-liter motor, and they're going to drop 150 pounds, so it'll be like 3,000 pounds. And then it'll probably be, if they get rid of the tires on the Corvettes have been crap for years. This is the first year they finally brought out the Michelin Cups that they're doing, that have given them like 724s with the ZR1 around the Nuremberg ring. And I think, for the Corvette team to finally dump those Goodyear run flats, it'll be, because the ride really is terrible with the run flats. When I dumped the run flats and bought non-run flats, and this is my third bet, I'm telling you, the ride is far superior. It's like silk. It's like the whole car dropped about 300 pounds. And even though it lost about 25 pounds in unsprung weight, it really transforms the vehicle. So I believe that what they've done with the Camaro, Z01, what they've done with the Z06 and with the ZR1, they'll do with the C7.
It'll be interesting to see it. It'll be interesting to see what they do. It's going to be a more globally appealing car, for one thing, than the current.
The problem with the global appeal on a Corvette is it's 5.5 liters or 6.2 liters. In Europe, they tax so heavily on engine displacement that they really don't get to play with the 3 liter or whatever cars coming out of Europe.
Makes me wonder if we won't see more engine options for the next Corvette beyond the V8.
No, I don't think so.
For international markets, it would be an interesting idea.
Oh, the turbo V6?
Mm-hmm. Be an interesting idea for international markets. Just for the very reasons you just mentioned. They tax anything too big in Europe, and same in China. You can't do it in China. But the
China
Chinese,
too?
Oh yeah, the Asian market I think will be very important, especially since it's a halo vehicle. Right now, the Camaro is far more the halo vehicle for Chevrolet in China than the Corvette is, and they use that as basically their image making model. Even though they don't sell hardly any of them, it's captured their attention largely because of the Transformer movies.
What about Audi? Did they come out with the 1.8-liter turbo 4-cylinder just for the Chinese market because they changed their laws or something? Or what a person who works for the government can buy? They can't buy anything bigger than a 1.8-liter. They're not allowed to have 2-liter motors anymore. They're working for the Chinese government.
I think it's a tax situation. I think that if I remember correctly, I think it's a displacement tax. The Chinese government is working towards getting smaller, more efficient motors just for the entire fleet. So it's not just, I think, for Audi, although Audi is obviously the vehicle of choice for a lot of statesmen and Chinese government officials. Chelsea, are you still here?
I'm still here.
Is Michelle here? Where'd Michelle go?
I think Michelle disappeared, but I've been around the whole time.
Michelle? She's been gone for a while. She didn't come back with Cat 5 cable, but I don't know if she just can't get back on the wireless or whatever now. I don't know. I'm not hearing from her.
Well, she should be able to call in on her cell phone, but maybe she can't get that either.
Maybe she struck it big. Down
No, that's probably it. She's off winning money.
She's off playing the slots. She struck it big. She won a car or a trip or something like that.
Probably. Or we just bored her to death.
Yeah. Ben is not sure where she's at either. I've texted her. I haven't heard back. She's gone AWOL. But I tell you what, Chelsea, I need to turn it over to you for a second because I need to take a constitutional.
Good to know.
Excuse me for a few moments, please. Thank you. Over to you, Chelsea.
All right, boys and girls, what's next?
I heard the Tesla S sedan is sold out. They sold out 6,500 units pre-sold, which is the entire 2012 production. And I believe you have a relative that's involved with Tesla.
I do indeed, yes.
So
not on Model S. I think that they're, I think that they're somewhat happy. I mean, they have lots of orders, and at the same time, at least anyone realistic in the industry knows that orders don't always convert to sales 100%. But given you how much you have to put down just to get on that list, these are fairly serious folks, no question. And it roughly correlates.
It's a $5,000 deposit, right?
Minimum, yeah. It's up to $5,000 to $40,000, and even the full price of the car if you want one of the super special ones. But yeah, so they're doing well with that. At the same time, just because they're doing well with that, they have not at all lost sight of the fact that they have a lot of work to do in the next year, and just how much people are eyeballing them, and especially more Fisker, but in the wake of the recent news about who's going to be the next Solyndra in the transport world and the DOE loans, and bringing that much more focus and congressional investigation into those two loans.
Hello?
Hello? I'm still here.
I didn't understand the last sentence. I apologize. Something about the loans?
Well, in the last, ever since Solyndra went bankrupt, there's that much more focus, especially in the coming election year, on the DOE loans. And so, the proponents and opponents both have started to look at the companies that got the DOE loans and are kind of speculating about who's going to be the next Solyndra. And obviously, the vast majority of the money went to Ford and Nissan, and no one thinks they're going to go down. But both Fisker and Tesla received Tesla almost $500 million and Fisker over $500 million. And so there's a lot of scrutiny going against those two companies right now, and particularly the DOE and the loans of who did what diligence, before that ever happened, and should it have been done. So it's been a huge media topic in the last week and a half or so.
Well, the Tesla sedan looks like a winner. It's $57,000, $67,000, and $77,000, right?
Yeah. I mean, definitely.
What are the three ranges? What is it? 160, 230, and 300.
Exactly. You got it right.
I mean, I have to tell you, I think it's a stunning vehicle. It certainly looks like, a $60,000, $70,000 Aston Martin to me. Except you never have to buy gasoline.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a
really
gorgeous
drive
car.
over 200 miles in a day?
And that's the thing. Most people don't even drive 100 miles in a day. But no, it's a gorgeous car. It's large, especially for an EV, which a lot of people like. It also, makes some question how they're going to be able to make money off of it that big. But no, if they can pull off making it and making it well, it'll do well.
Would you say it's the same size as a Porsche Panamera?
It's the size of a BMW 7 Series.
So that's a big car.
That's a big car. Yes.
It's a big car. And it really has the little seats in the back behind the what is it? They have 7 seating capability or something?
Yeah, the last two are going to be an option, supposedly.
Okay. I mean, I wouldn't buy the 7-seat option. I don't need it, but I was just curious. That's how big it is. All I can tell you is if they can really go 230 miles, I think that $67,000 one sounds like a real winner.
Yeah.
I bet you that's the best seller.
I think
What do you think they're all?
Oh, I think the 160-mile one will end up being the best seller. Personally.
Okay. Do you think they'll be able to upgrade at a certain point from the $57,000 one? Let's say you own it for 5 years, and battery technology gets so advanced that you could actually upgrade the batteries to get higher mileage?
Sure. I mean, Tesla's talking about, I'm curious to see if they do it and how they do it, but they're talking about being able to exchange battery packs for temporary periods of time, going on vacation and whatnot.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I will be very interested to see how Tesla does a lot of their things.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
Do you guys think it's smoke and mirrors, or do you think it's actual?
No, not
stuff?
for Tesla.
I don't think smoke and mirrors.
I think
just
it's real.
smoke and mirrors.
Yeah. Tesla actually, I mean, frankly, they have a lot of money. And when you throw that much money at something, you're going to come out something's going to come out the other end. I'm actually scheduled to go and actually get a plant tour just after the LA Auto Show that Thursday. I'm flying up to San Francisco, and I've arranged to go and see exactly what they're doing. I think I'm the first analyst they're letting in the plants. But for Tesla, no, I don't think it's smoke and mirrors. I think it's still some ambitious timing and some ambitious sales figures, but they will build something out the other end.
You don't think they have the capacity to build the 6,500 cars that they sold already?
Oh, I think they're going to have plenty of capacity. They're going to be building these. The plant that they're using is the old Fremont plant, and it is about 4 times the size of what they need for the volume of the cars they're talking about. The question is, can a brand that basically has a fraction of the dealer body of a major luxury brand, no real history to it in terms of reliability beyond just the Roadster, and a cost as much as it is, and frankly the EV itself not being quite as practical as a conventional gas vehicle, and it is still an unusual technology that does take some getting used to and some changes in lifestyle. Can they sell as many vehicles as they say they're going to sell in 2014? They're talking about 20,000 units a year in 2014 and beyond. And while only maybe 15,000 of that might be in the U.S., that would make it one of the best-selling large luxury cars in the market.
They're also talking about 2 more vehicles by that time.
Yeah, and they're also talking about the one that's smaller than that. And that's not Nina. That's Fisker's talking about Nina, but the crossover that they're talking about.
Model X.
Model X
for 2013, and then also the new. They haven't really named, it's codenamed Blue Star, but they haven't named the 3 Series size platform. But that's their next thing, and they want to do multiple iterations of that.
Right.
So Elon's talking a car a year for the next year. No. Well, they're an investor and they own, a few percent, 5% or something. But no, it's
primarily. That would be a great way for Toyota to get back on their feet.
That's what I've said.
I personally think they'll end up buying Tesla.
I think Tesla would make an excellent complement to Lexus in terms of a specialized EV green brand that they could put in the Lexus showrooms. Because frankly, Lexus is not having too much success with the hybrid systems that they're selling. The dealers themselves don't even like the HS. The new CT is a little bit better. I mean, it's a bit more fun, but you drive it, it sure as heck doesn't feel like a Lexus. It does not feel luxurious. It does not feel like it's to that level of sophistication. It feels like a fancier Toyota. But to have Lexus in the Toyota showrooms as specifically the one that can focus on these alternative technologies, I think would make a very compelling brand case. Because immediately you have access to a much larger distribution network, a much larger sales volume, and you don't have to focus, you don't have to try to make Lexus fit that kind of green brand, when really, quite frankly, it doesn't. It's a luxury, it's an opulent luxury brand. It's not necessarily the green hybrid brand, and the ones that they've had, the dealers don't even want them because they don't fit with what the customers want. So I think it'd make an interesting case there.
And Lexus dealership and have Toyota and Scion and Prius, and that would be their 5 brands.
Well, Prius is kind of a sub-brand. They've talked about. We've asked them just how separate Prius is going to be, and it's still going to be in the Toyota showroom. It'll still be the Toyota Prius, but Prius is just now being expanded to being a family of stuff. So.
I'm sorry, I'm looking at this Tesla S. I'm loving this thing.
It's a beautiful car. It's remarkably wide.
Nice.
And it's just the problem is, and I find this is an issue with a lot of the EV upstarts, is that they promise a lot without, I think, fully realizing what it takes to be an automaker. I mean, being an automaker is an extremely difficult task. It's an extremely expensive proposition. Thousands of people work at automakers to try and make things happen, and they have access to resources that cost billions and billions and billions of dollars. There's a reason you don't have a lot of mom-and-pop upstart automakers, and that's because the barrier to entry is a huge investment to get things right and to actually make a difference beyond just a niche player. So I think that when you look at Fisker and Tesla, they've gotten a lot of money from people who want to try and do something different than the way Detroit does it. But the thing is, the way Detroit does it, frankly, in many ways works. And it isn't all that different from the way that a lot of automakers in the rest of the world do it. There's certain ways and common themes and processes that happen globally. And that's really kind of what has to happen in order to make it work. Can Tesla and Fisker make something out of what they've been given? Yeah, I think so. Can they do it by themselves? No, I don't think they can. I don't think they have the pockets that are deep enough or the reach that the current global automakers have, and I don't think they can be competitive with the current global automakers given the cost structure that they're talking about. So there's a future for them potentially, but as independent automakers, I don't think it's possible. But then again, I'm accused of being a pessimist. So
who's going to buy Tesla?
My money would be on Toyota.
Who's going to buy?
The bigger question is: do you think Elon would sell Tesla?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that's what he does. Elon starts business and he runs them, and then eventually comes a time when you sell them and move on to the next big thing. I think Elon's probably more interested in SpaceX than he is in Tesla, quite frankly.
Yeah, but he's tied so much of his ego to Tesla.
Yeah.
That I think it's going to be a while. And frankly, I mean, as much as the speculation is that Toyota will buy them, Toyota is not into EVs. And I'm worried about the RAV program even, because they are going through the motions because they have to, but not at all into it.
Yeah. Well, they're doing it because they have to because of the California mandate. The thing
and reputation. They were literally the last automaker to announce a plug-in. With any sort of decent electrification.
That's true. Well, Chrysler's not on board yet.
Heck, even Fiat was out there, though, before, which, technically, but for the company that was, they're the GM of hybrids, is what it comes down to. For a company that had a lead like that, it was glaring that they weren't in the space.
Yeah, and it was funny to listen to Marchione talk about the Fiat 500 EV. He basically would spit every time he had to talk about it, just because he just thought the thing was so distasteful and going against what the 500 should be. It's really kind of funny. But it's interesting to hear you talk about Toyota that way. And it is so different than the green halo that they bank on with Prius.
I mean, they have always been brilliant at marketing, but they have never been the company that everyone thinks they are.
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting to see the way that their own, as I understand it, part of their big problem is that their own internal lithium-ion program didn't pan out. They apparently pursued a chemistry that just, I guess, didn't work. And that's really
it depends on. I don't know if it didn't work, but they spent a lot of time trying to convince the world that lithium wasn't ready, mostly so they could to sell more nickel pre-I. So what the truth was versus what their position was were probably pretty different.
Could be.
I mean, it's worth noting both Tesla and Toyota are still using Panasonic.
Yeah.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, based on history, it's a fine thing. I mean, that's what's been in the RAVs before, and their nickel product has been fantastic. But if it really were so bad for lithium, then I doubt they'd still be using it.
Well, as I understand it, that the Panasonic batteries are not necessarily an automotive-grade battery. That they basically started off as a modification